November 10th, 2025, Tualatin City Council meeting. Now call this meeting into order. First item on our agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance led tonight by Councilor Sacco.
Everybody can please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to our announcements part of the agenda. And our first announcement tonight is a proclamation declaring Saturday, November 29th, 2025, as Small Business Saturday in the city of Tualatin. And we have Analia Jackson from the Chamber of Commerce coming on up with a presentation. Welcome, Analia. Press the button.
Oh, there it is. Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. We have wonderful things happening in Tualatin for Small Business Saturday. We have the new business showcase, and what we just delivered to you is your Tualatin moose bag. So long ago when I first started, my good friend Sherilyn took me to lunch. She was one of the first people to welcome me to Tualatin, and she taught me that Tualatin is shaped like a moose. And I didn't believe her. I thought, you're kidding me. And so I went back to the chamber and I got a map out, and sure enough, we are shaped like a moose. And I thought, I need to do something with that. So we, yeah. Yeah, you can't unsee it. So now we've created a graphic where Tualatin is a moose and it's shop local. And so there's some goodies in the bag for you, and we'll be having these bags on sale. We also are going to have a business showcase to kick off the holiday season for Small Business Saturday. That is going to be proclamation tonight. But our showcase will be on November 21st at the library. So we're inviting all small businesses to come and show us, network and show us what they have. So should I read this, or will you read it?
Actually, Councilor Gonzalez is going to read the
I
proclamation.
love that. Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The proclamation is, whereas the city of Tualatin, Oregon, celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they've make to our local economy and community. According to the U.S. Small Business Administration and its Office of Advocacy, there are now approximately 36.2 million small businesses in the United States, accounting for nearly all U.S. firms and contributing to nearly 46% of private sector employment. Whereas small business employ nearly half of all private sector workers, approximately 45% of the U.S. workforce, and are responsible for roughly 90% of net new jobs created from March 2023 to March 2024. Small business accounts for a net increase of about 1.2 million jobs of 1 million total. Whereas small business continues to face post-pandemic challenges, including inflation, supply chain disruption, labor and benefit cost, even as many have adapted with increased online presence and pivoting businesses models. Whereas consumers continue to value purchasing from locally owned businesses, studies indicate that a very high percentage of Americans believe small business possibilities impact their communities and local economies. Whereas Tualatin, Oregon strongly supports our local businesses to create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Tualatin does hereby proclaim November 29, 2025 as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Introduced, adopted the 10th day of November, 2025.
Thank you.
Yes.
Then I have a copy of the proclamation if you want to grab a copy of it.
Yes, I'd love
I
it.
don't know if anybody taking pictures or just hand it over. We'll just hand it over. Come on.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor Reyes, for wearing the moose.
Thank you, Analia. Next up, we have a new employee introduction, new policy analyst, Quinn Bruner, being introduced by Sid.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Bubenik and members of the council. I'm excited to be here. My name is Sid Sin, Urban Renewal Economic Development Manager. And it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Quinn Bruner. And his first day here was October 29th, so he's like, I think, on day 9 now. And so Quinn has been busy. On his first day on Wednesday, the 29th, he attended the CAC, downtown CAC meeting. So that was about a 12-hour day for him. So, and he still came back, so we're excited for that. So Quinn comes to us from the city of Lake Oswego, where he was a management analyst and also a
Joe
program
Buck's going to hate me.
and a program manager there in the city manager's office, and that's where he honed his skills in project management and working with the community. And so, super excited to have him on board. It's a great skill set, great interpersonal skills, project management skills, and analytical. And he's a great strategic thought partner, being able to see the big picture, but also really get down into the details of things. So Quinn's going to be working on some exciting projects. And as you know, we've got the Southwest Urban Renewal District, and so he's going to focus on that and try to get that some of the projects in there going. Earlier this year, the council annexed in 50 acres down in there, and so we're really excited to help get that property redeveloped down there. And also he's going to take an active role working with our CAC and on the downtown revitalization project. Then lastly, doing a lot of economic development work, working with Analia at the chamber and some of our other business here in the community. So with that, if there's any questions, available for any questions.
Floor is yours, Quinn.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me as a member of your team. You're probably the last people I need to tell that this is an exceptionally exciting time to be a part of this community, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to contribute. So thank you for having me. I look forward to working with all of you in the coming weeks and months.
All right, well, thanks for joining our team. Again, probably Martha is not a fan of yours right now either. But welcome to Tualatin. You've already made an impression. I've already heard of you before your email today. So first impressions have been super positive, to let you know.
Good to hear.
People are appreciating your energy and your initiative. Your email today was fantastic. So welcome to the team, and we all look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity to speak to the council on an item that is not on the agenda tonight. Please keep your comments to about 3 minutes. If there's anyone in the room who would like to address the council, I'll take them first. And then after that, I'll go to the folks in Zoom. I have one person who's signed up for public comment, but you don't have to be signed up. Once the person who's signed up is completed, you can always just raise your hand and come forward to the podium. So I have, is it Janet Bailey signed up? Come on up, Ms. Bailey. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, you guys. I'm Janet Bailey. I've lived in Tualatin for 20 plus years. This is awesome to see everyone like this. I love to see a community that's involved. So I'd like to speak tonight regarding a land agreement that I hear going around talking, people talking around town. So, you know, a lot of harm has happened to a lot of people. And under common law, the power of the government is gained through consent of the people. I'm respectful of those who have lived on the land hundreds of years ago, and I honor their contribution to the culture and all they might have taught us. We could probably do a lot more today about being better guardians of our land. At now, this moment in time, we are moving forward towards governing with common law. In the common law, this land has been purchased and sold and purchased and sold and purchased and sold. And there are many documents and deeds to prove so. So if a land agreement says that the land belongs to indigenous people or someone else, I disagree, and I do not consent. Primarily because it's not the truth under common law. I do not consent to a land agreement being part of our schools or any other public meeting because it is not consistent with common law. I am not alone with disagreeing with a land agreement. I am just a representative of the people. This land cannot belong to two owners. And so I, along with many others, do not consent with a land agreement saying that the land belongs to someone else. So what place would a land agreement have in any school, meeting, or gathering for this day and this time? Again, property owners do not consent to giving up their common law rights. What is the purpose of this? What are we doing here? As a property owner, I claim my rights as property that I've paid for. So, I'd love to have a copy of this land agreement that I hear everyone talking about. Can any of you help me? Do any of you have this land agreement that people are starting to buzz talking about this around town? I don't know where to get one.
I think you're referring to an land acknowledgement, aren't you?
Oh, maybe it is.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't know where to get it. Do you?
Right now, we don't have one.
Where does it come from?
It's something this is a subject under discussion with our IDEA committee. And Councilor Consacco is the representative on that committee if you want to address it a little bit.
Sure, I can address that. The council has, so I guess let's take one step back. A group of community members supported a land acknowledgement and brought it forth to the city council probably about 2 years now ago. And the city council has tasked the IDEA committee to take a look at that. And the IDEA committee today has made no recommendations to approve a land acknowledgement to this day. So there is nothing being put forward as of today.
Thank you for your clarification, because really, there's a lot of buzzing going on, a lot of talking going on about this. And you heard what I have to say about it, but there's a lot of talk. So thank you for your clarification.
Okay, thank you for coming. Anyone else in the room who would like to address council on something that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none. Bates, anybody in Zoom? All right, going once, twice. All right, thank you. That brings us to our consent agenda. The consent agenda, those items considered routine, they'll be adopted by one motion unless someone on the council would like an item removed and heard separately later tonight. Tonight, the consent agenda consists of 2 items. Item number 1, consideration of approval of the work session and regular meeting minutes of October 27th, 2025. And item number 2 is consideration of resolution number 5926-25 to adopt the City of Tualatin investment policy. Would any councilor like one or both of these items removed from consent and heard later tonight? Or do I have another motion?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as read.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda as read. Any discussions on those motions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. All right. That brings us to special reports. Special report number 1 is the outside agency grant awardee, Just Compassion. Are they here to present? Don't see them. All right. Maybe they're running late. We'll come back. That makes it easier for Joe Gall to get out earlier. So Clean Water Services State of the District presentation. Joe, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joe Gall, the Chief Utility Relations Officer for Clean Water Services. And before I introduce the gentleman next to me, I want to acknowledge a few members of the audience. First, 2 members of our Board of Directors are here tonight. Chair Harrington is here, and also Director Jason Snyder. Notice I called them directors, not commissioners, because they are here as representing the Clean Water Services Board tonight. And then I also have a member of my team, Shannon Huggins, who is on the communications and community engagement team and is a Tualatin resident here tonight as well. So we have about a 10 to 15 minute presentation, and then we'll have questions at the end. I also want to reference this document. This is a report that's basically an annual report from last fiscal year. There's a lot of data in there that may be very interesting to you that's not in the slideshow. And I can answer any questions that are in there as well. So the gentleman next to me is a first-time visitor to the city of Tualatin. So Rick Shanley is our interim CEO/general manager, and he's joining me in these visits to our different partner cities, and I would like Rick to take a moment to introduce himself. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Joe, and thanks, Mayor and Council, for having us this evening. I'm not going to read the slide in detail and tell you about myself, but I did want to say I've been with Clean Water for about 12 years prior to taking the interim CEO role. So in my past capacity, which I'm still doing somewhat, I was the Chief Engineer and Water Technology Officer. So I know the city is really interested, and Joe's got a resolution in order talking about us coming back and presenting more about rates. I've been really active in the CIP development, making sure that we're bringing innovation and trying to work with industry to bring technologies to keep our CIP costs low, partnering with our regulatory affairs group and DEQ to make sure our regulations are best suited for what we need to do to protect the watershed. So a lot of background and really passion in that area. Prior to that, I worked for a private consulting firm, and Clean Water was my favorite client because they do a lot of things differently that I think is really what gets that group and the staff at Clean Water excited about work every day. So I really just wanted to introduce myself. Mostly, though, I haven't met many of you. I've met Sherilyn a couple times in my new role, and just happy to be here. Look forward to seeing you in the future, and if there are any things you ever want to ping me about, of course, I look forward to hearing from you all. With that, I'll turn it over to Joe.
and Rick is the engineer, so if I get any tough,
Yes.
technical questions, I will tap him on the shoulder. So, because I am not an engineer. So some of this, the council may know, just kind of a refresher, but with such a nice audience here in the room and at home, just some reminders about Clean Water Services. So we are a wastewater and stormwater government utility. We serve the urban area of Washington County. We have 12 partner cities. You're one of our partner cities. And then we also provide services in the urban unincorporated area, the Alowas, the Bull Mountains, and other areas of the community. You can see our current budget, $752 million. I think one of the things that's very unique about CWS is we have an integrated watershed-based permit. We were the country's first to do that. That really drives our business, and that's unique for Clean Water Services. We have a very close working relationship with the county. Sometimes people think we're part of the county, but we are not. We are a separate utility that is under ORS 451. The one link to the county, though, is governance. So the County Board of Commissioners is also our board of directors and serves in that role. An important commission to the board is the Clean Water Services Advisory Commission. So this commission has stakeholders that represents different groups that certainly provide input to us. So there are reps from the agricultural community that serve on that commission. There are reps from the business community, the developer builder community, and the environmental community, who all provide input to the district. There are also representatives for each district for tied to the commissioner districts. And then most importantly, we have a city rep, and that happens to be your city manager, Sherry Lynn Lombos, serves in that role and has done that for many years, and we love her input as part of CWAC. And you can see how many employees. We're slightly below 500 employees as an organization. So who receives services from CWS? Depending on where you are in the county, you get different types of services. So Tualatin is one of our 7 largest cities that you basically get regional services, and I'll go into this in a second, from Clean Water Services. And then the smaller communities that are on the slide in the urban unincorporated areas, they get regional and local services from Clean Water Services. So they don't have this public works staff, for example, that Tualatin does. So we provide that local services for those communities. King City next door, for example, is one of those cities. And then certain industrial customers in our area also get permits from us. On the back of this report, you can see all the companies in Tualatin that get an industrial permit from us. Tualatin has a fair number of businesses that get their industrial permits from us. I think probably second most after Hillsborough. And we have that direct relationship in terms of the billing. I mentioned regional services, so this is what we do, and this is, I like to say, the big pipes. So we provide first, all of our treatment facilities are operated and run by Clean Water Services. Everything here goes to the Durham facility in Tigard, next to Tigard High School. We also do all of the pump stations, and the 24-inch lines and larger are our responsibility. Another important part of that regional service is all of the relationship with DEQ and our permit, which I will touch upon in a second. So we do all the reporting, although in the document that you receive, you see a lot of data that what Tualatin does, for example, that's how we do this work together. So that information is provided to us, and then we report to DEQ on our permit. The local services are the services that your city does to help co-implement the permit. So the smaller pipes, 21 inches and smaller, are maintained, owned and maintained by the city of Tualatin. And then all of the stormwater, the local stormwater activities, street sweeping, maintaining water quality facilities and things like that, you do within your own city in conjunction with us. As many of you may recall, before I joined Clean Water Services, I was the city manager in that city next door in Sherwood. And before I joined Clean Water Services, I thought I really understood CWS, but I really didn't until I got into the organization. And one of my lessons, and I always reinforce this when I talk to my city partners, is this 5-year permit that really drives the business that we do day in and day out. So you can see the list of things that we are required to do as part of that permit. But it's really something that I didn't realize until I got to Clean Water Services in terms of how important that permit is to the work we do on a day-to-day basis. This graph shows us where we are. We're in the 2023 to 2027 permit currently. We're getting close to, you see in June 2027, we have to apply for a new permit. So we're already planning for that new permit, working with DEQ. I think the other thing is we're also, besides that next 5-year cycle, we're looking out 10 years to what kind of new regulations may be on the horizon that we should be planning for the future. You've heard probably about PFAS. That's something that we're very concerned about, how that would impact the services we provide. So that's important in terms of the timeline in terms of our permit cycle. I wanted to just give you a sense of what we spent last fiscal year on various projects. Many of these projects are multi-year projects. So the Norwood pump station didn't cost $15,000. That's just the beginning of the costs associated with that. So the 3 bullets at the top of this list are all local projects or projects within the city of Tualatin. But I also put up there improvements that we are making at the Durham facility, because those improvements benefit Tualatin and the other communities that send their wastewater to the Durham treatment facility. We just completed, this past week, actually, our board adopted what is called the West Basin Master Plan. This has been about a 2-year effort. You can see the map here. The West Basin is the green area. This is really a 20-year plan for our wastewater regional system. And in the green area, there are 3 treatment facilities. There's one in Forest Grove and then 2 in Hillsborough that provide treatment for those communities. You're in the East Basin, which I'll touch upon in a second, and all your flow goes to our Durham facility next to Tigard High School. This plan that we just did with the West Basin communities, and we certainly did it with the East Basin, is developed in close coordination with the cities. So basically, we're looking and asking you, what are your plans for the next 20 years? How do you want to develop? What kind of industries do you want to bring? What kind of commercial areas, residential expansion areas? So we are planning for the future so we can provide that infrastructure when it's needed at the right time, and we don't hold up or slow down any of your aspirations as a community. The West Basin Master Plan, like I said, just got completed. You can see the numbers up there. So $920 million in conveyance projects through 2045, and another almost $500 million on treatment plant improvements through 2045. Again, there's 3 treatment plants in the West Basin. So that's $1.4 billion over the next 20 years for just the West Basin. In the East Basin, which is what Tualatin is a member of, we completed this one in 2022. You can see the numbers, $301 million on conveyance projects. A number of those are here in Tualatin. And then another a little over $100 million at the Durham treatment facility over the 20-year time horizon. These are fairly significant dollars, obviously. And I think one of the things that's important, and again, I didn't realize this until I got to CWS, is we have fairly healthy reserves because of these long-term investments that are important to fund over the 20-year time horizon. And this is why rates are so important in SDCs, to make sure that they're lined up to support this kind of investment over the next 20 years. This is a 5-year total of what is planned in Tualatin. You can see $78 million over the next 5 years. A number of those projects are trunk lines that are actually local lines that are smaller, that are your responsibility, that regional funds are actually going toward to pay for that through our CAPP program. And then a number of pump stations, largely to serve the Basalt Creek expansion areas. We have 3 pump stations that need to be built over the next 5 to 7 years to help serve that area that you are going to continue to expand into. Another important project that I wanted you to be aware of that just is about to kick off. So you had passed a resolution earlier this year, and one of the things you wanted us to look at was billing. Really to take a look at the most effective, efficient type of billing. You have billed on our behalf for many, many decades. It's been 2008 since we really did a deep dive in how we bill within the district. So I'm very excited. We're going to be hiring a consultant by the end of this calendar year. We'll be working with our city partners, including Tualatin, to look at what the different alternatives are to billing. And I think it will be a good project. It should be completed about a year from now. We will work very closely with your finance staff, who's going to be very busy putting their budget together. That's why it's scheduled to be a little longer. We want to make sure we do it right, and we ask good questions and get good input from our stakeholders. So more to come on that. And then last 2 things that I want you to be aware of. Again, these are requirements on our permit. They're due November 1st, a little less than a year from now. We're just about to kick off. We had a board work session to talk about this, and we'll be at our advisory committee tomorrow night. We have some very specific limited language around stormwater in our design and construction standards. Again, we'll work very closely with your city staff on this, but we have to update those sections by next November 1st. And then the other heavy lift for us that we're currently working right now with Tualatin is our operating IGA. So our operating IGA, which is really how we work together, and that IGA has not been updated comprehensively since 2008. So again, it's overdue. It's been amended a number of times, but we're working right now with your city, also working with Washington County. We've completed Beaverton, Hillsborough, and Cornelius, and we've got a number of cities after we are done with Tualatin to get to that November 1st, 2026 deadline. The other thing I want to mention that was in your resolution, you want to hear more about rates. So we will be back here hopefully in February with much more information on new rates, rate development, answer more questions that you have about how we set our rates, answer questions in terms of the proposed rates that we'll be proposing next year. So that's on the horizon, and I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And with that, I've covered a lot of ground in a very quick time. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Questions for Rick and/or Joe? Councilor Gonzalez.
So thank you very much for being here and presenting to us. I do have specific questions on when it comes to the water quality swales that are throughout various communities that you guys care for or don't care for. Can you tell me a little bit about what is the care practices for the water? Because that's where it all begins. The water ends up in the catch basins, sedimentation tanks, and move down the system into the water quality, and then it goes from there. When I'm out in communities, I see a not so good care practices that Clearwater performs on these swales. So can you talk to me about what that looks like? And then my second question is on the fertilizer, the green fertilizer. Do you sell that or do you give that away? Is it sold or is it something that's just donated to communities?
The
fertilizers.
Ostara product,
Yeah.
we have a partnership with Ostara, and they pay us for that product, and then they use it in various applications.
Around the water quality swales, can you tell me a little bit about what it looks like? I know that is the lowest hanging fruit for the climate action plan. You know, that those have to be cared for, and some of the requirements with some of the HOAs are quite arduous to maintain them, but when I see this, the practices that Clearwater does, it doesn't match. You know, the expectation for homeowner associations is arduous, but Clearwater Services doesn't maintain the same standards. So can you talk to me about what that looks like, on how often are you supposed to be maintaining them, caring for them, replanting them, and those kinds of things?
My understanding, and I'm not the expert in this area, there's private water quality facilities, and then there's ones that are maintained by actually the city and by CWS. So the city has a role in this as well.
Right.
So it may be specific to whoever the owner is. And if there are drainage swales that are not being maintained, I'd love to hear specifically what those locations are, because we do inspections on a very routine basis.
What is routine? Is it every 1 year, 3 year, 4 years?
I'd have to get back to you to get a definitive action, but I would do.
I think it's every 4 years. That's
Yeah.
what it is, and what I looked into. I know that I'll be driving our own cities as well, but I also wanted to know who is Clearwater Service, because I've worked in my private sector role. I work with
Yes.
Clearwater Services in caring for these and the requirements are quite arduous, but I don't. And I will get specific later when I point out the right ones, but I just wanted to just hear a general idea of what are the care practices for those, because that is low-hanging fruit for the climate action plan again. And if we're doing catch basins, sedimentation tanks, and all those things, it eventually ends up in there. And if it's not properly cared for or filtered, then they're for nothing. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about that.
It is on a 3 to 4 year cycle, that's my understanding, but let me confirm that.
Okay.
Counselor, I'd like to actually get someone that has more expertise to respond to your question more specifically, instead of giving you something that may not be fully accurate tonight, but I'm happy to follow up with you directly and share also with the rest of the council.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Pratt.
Thank you. Well, I had the opportunity to go to your few-hour training class, so it was very enlightening about all that Clean Water Services does and what it takes to keep all the requirements of this permit, and how much this affects our community and how much of the stormwater runoff goes into our river. So I really appreciate all you do. My only comment is that I know these upgrades are probably all needed, but they're huge numbers, as you said. So when you come back to us in the future, I just, I guess, want more detail on how you determine that and how you balance. I mean, we all know everybody right now, everything's going up more than all our wages are. So just how you're balancing the needs for improvements to this system with the need to keep costs down for all our consumers. Thanks.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share that information with you.
And Council President Pratt, thank you for going to CWS Essentials. We would love to have all of our local elected partners go through that eventually, and we'll offer the class again in 2026. So,
Other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you both for coming. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and I've been on the tour of Durham, the tour you gave going back to the beginning of the Tualatin River and working our way back. So they're very enlightening tours, and Clean Water Services does some fantastic work. I know we butt heads about rates and stuff like that and permitting, but I know we can work it out. But very much appreciate what you do. Obviously, it takes a lot of weight off the cities that we don't have to stand up our own systems, that we have consolidated systems. So there's efficiency, but there's also sometimes disagreements or like this planning thing is fantastic. You know, what came to mind was, all the changes going on in Salem with housing. Remember former Commissioner Roy Rogers' head spinning when it came into where single-family zoning went out, and now you can put multi-units into what single-family was, and that the pipes would have to be redone, all that stuff, and you guys have to deal with that along with cities. So you're in the same boat as us in certain things from Salem, and having to plan that on a 10-year horizon is very difficult.
thank
But-
you, Mayor.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
I also want to mention, we have a very good working relationship with your staff. We love working with your staff. We don't usually butt heads, but we do have some spirited
Right, on the
discussions.
on the political side. Staff always has high things to say about you.
But
So
the work that we do, we really do together. We could not do the work we do as a district without a strong partnership with our cities. And I just want to acknowledge that
Yep.
as well.
Okay, great. Well, again,
Thank you.
thank you for coming tonight and taking time out of your evening.
Thank you.
Nice
All
to
right.
meet you all. Thank you.
All right, so I'll do my second call here for Just Compassion. Have they come yet? The representatives, no? All right, okay. So then we'll move on into the agenda. That brings us to our public hearing. We have a public hearing tonight. Item number 1, consideration of an appeal for or request for review of the Architectural Review Board, ARB, September 10th, 2025, decision to approve with conditions AR 24-0002 Lamb Research Corporation's Tux Development to construct 4 buildings on 4 lots located at 11155 to 11361 Southwest Leviton Drive, tax lots 2S122AA 500 and 800, 2S122A00100, 2S122BA00100, in the Light Manufacturing Park Zone, otherwise known as MP. I have a script here to read. It's quite lengthy, so be patient, because we want to make sure everything is covered for this hearing. This is an appeal of a Type 3 Architectural Review Board decision for AR 24-0002 made on September 10th, 2025, approving with conditions the construction of 4 buildings totaling 2,424, what the heck, I'm getting tongue-tied here. 200,400, we'll say roughly 240,000 square feet on 4 lots comprising 75.96 acres in the manufacturing park zone. The hearing is subject to Tualatin Development Codes Type 4-A quasi-judicial hearings procedure. This approval is de novo, meaning new evidence and argument may be submitted. AR 24-0002 was submitted by McKinsey on behalf of Lamb Research Corporation on July 8, 2024. The subject property is 75.96 acres located at 11155 to 11361 Southwest Leventon Drive. The site is zoned for Manufacturing Park Planning District and has a frontage along Southwest Leventon Drive, Southwest 108th Avenue, and Southwest Tualatin Road. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. First, the public hearing will be opened and a staff report will be presented. Then, entry of additional correspondence received into the record, followed by inviting testimony in the following order. First, the proponent, which is Lamb Research Corporation or their representative. Second, the appellant, Brent Hamilton and or his representatives. Then it'll be followed by interested persons in favor of the proposal, followed by interested persons opposed to the proposal, and completed with a rebuttal by Lamb to those things mentioned during the testimony. The public hearing would then be closed, and then questions of staff, if any, by City Council, followed by a decision by Council. Regarding testimony, if you wish to speak, please wait for me to ask for testimony and raise your hand or select the raise hand button in Zoom if you're joining us virtually. I'll recognize those people wishing to speak. Any questions should be addressed through me. Please state both your name and address for the record when you come to the podium, as the hearing will be recorded. Please keep testimony concise and to the point. For those folks providing testimony, please limit to about 3 minutes. The criteria for approval are contained in TDC 32, 33, 62, 63, 73A through D, 74, and 75. Specific information regarding the applicable criteria can be found in Section 5, applicable to Tualatin Development Code and Municipal Code sections of the November 10, 2025 Supplemental Staff Memo. These are the criteria the Council must use in making this decision. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Please relate to any testimony to these listed criteria. The appeal before the Council this evening must be decided based on the criteria. Despite the importance of other issues that may be raised during the public hearing, the authority of Council is limited only to those issues that address compliance with the applicable criteria. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to accord the Council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of the approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in Circuit Court. At this time, I ask members of Council to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from this hearing. Does any member of the Council have a ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest? Councilor Hillier.
Mayor, I will be recusing myself from this evening's proceedings due to the fact that I have already ruled on this as part of the Architectural Review Board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? All right. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any member's impartiality on this issue tonight? Okay, seeing none. I'll go ahead now and open this hearing, and staff will present their report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bubenik and City Council members and members of the audience. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss appeal of AR 24-0002 for Lamb Research Development proposal that was approved on September 10th, 2025 by the Architectural Review Board. My name is Keith Leonard, Associate Planner with the City of Tualatin. With me are Community Development Director Aquila Herdravich, City Attorney Kevin McConnell, and City Engineer Mike McCarthy. Brett Hamilton, the appellant, requested the appeal of the ARB's approval. We received a number of public comments after the ARB packet was released in September that have been added to the public record as Exhibit F. The appellant's comments from September 10th, 2024 through October 31st, 2025 are in Exhibit C. The appellant submitted additional comments on November 7th pertaining to the northernmost 108th Avenue driveway that have been provided to the council. We have also added a petition submitted by the appellant as a supplemental Exhibit 8L. On November 4th, 2025, the appellant submitted a letter dated October 10th, 2025 from his attorney, Andrew Mulkey, that was addressed to the Code Compliance Officer, Brian Levine. Attorney Mulkey also submitted a letter dated November 3rd, 2025 for the public record, and both attorney letters are included in Exhibit K. Exhibit M is a response we received on November 7th from Mackenzie on behalf of Lamb Research addressing traffic concerns that provided update traffic counts. We also added supplemental Exhibit N, appellate comments regarding 108th North Access and Building G site plan, and supplemental Exhibit O, Lamb's attorney's response to appellant's attorney's Exhibit K. We also received an email at 4:27 p.m. today from Attorney Mulkey addressing the 108th driveway. And finally, I would like to add to the public record, along with the staff report and staff memorandum addressing the appellant's claims and other attachments and exhibits. The appellant filed an appeal of the ARB's September 10th decision on September 25th within the 14-day appeals period. If the council chooses to approve the appeal, then the ARB decision would be invalidated. A denial of the appeal would affirm ARB's decision to approve Lamb's development proposal. The subject site is comprised of 4 parcels totaling about 76 acres located north of Leviton Drive, west of 108th Avenue, and south of Tualatin Road. All lots are zoned manufacturing park. The site is currently occupied by Lamb Research Corporation and is improved with several other buildings associated site improvements. Current access is provided by 3 existing driveways from 108th Avenue and 3 driveways from Leviton Drive. And this is an aerial photo of the site. To the north is Tualatin Road, it's from 108th Avenue, and south actually it's bordered to the north by Tualatin Road, east from 108th Avenue, and south by Leviton Drive. The appeal is a Type 4A review of the ARB's Type 3 decision approving AR 24-0002. Important dates include the application being submitted on July 8th, 2024, deemed incomplete on July 24th, 2024, and deemed complete at the request of the applicant on December 16th, 2024. The city sent out 3 public hearing notices due to the applicant asking for the public hearing to be delayed in order to adjust their plans. The final public hearing notice was sent on May 16th, 2025. On July 21st, 2025, the city received updated materials that reduced the proposed development size, moved building construction south toward Leviton Drive, and removed an applicant proposed employee access from Tualatin Road. On August 20th, the Planning Commission approved the Industrial Master Plan IMP 24-0001 from the site, and the ARB approved the Architectural Review AR 24-0002 on September 10th. The appellant filed an appeal on September 5th prior to expiration of the appeals period on September 26th. This is the site plan of the Lamb proposal. The areas shaded in blue are where building construction will take place, and the darker gray areas are where other site development under AR 24-0002 was approved. Light gray areas have been previously developed. The Tualatin Road driveway, shaded in light gray, will remain closed to Lamb employees and is considered an emergency entrance for Lamb, while JE will continue to utilize this driveway as they have for years. As previously mentioned, there are 3 driveways from 108th and 3 driveways from Leviton Drive that all existed prior to the submittal of AR 24-0002. The dark gray shaded driveway on Leviton was approved under AR 24-0002 and is planned for truck access. Employees and visitors can choose from 6 existing ingress and egress routes on 108th Avenue and Leviton Drive. A 120,000 square foot office building, 90,000 square foot laboratory building, 29,000 square foot utilities building, and 2,230 square foot storage building with associated site improvements were approved by the ARB. A net increase of 544 parking spaces are proposed with the site landscaping, hardscaping, and stormwater facilities. As I previously mentioned, there are 3 existing driveways on 108th and 3 existing on Leviton, with 1 new truck access driveway being constructed from Leviton Drive as part of the previous architectural review approval. TDC 33.0205 lists the applicable code criteria for large commercial and industrial development, including Chapter 73A through G. Conditions of approval may implement and require public facilities and services needed to serve proposed developments through Chapter 74 and 75. Chapter 62 contains requirements for setbacks and other dimensional and use standards. Environmental requirements are in Chapter 63, including noise regulations, which will be applied to the development on an ongoing basis once approved development under AR 24-0002 is constructed and operational. The appellant appeal makes claims in 3 categories that I'll address individually in the upcoming slides. We have provided a more thorough analysis in Memorandum Attachment B. The first claim category is that Lamb's land use application did not meet all applicable criteria. The second claim claims that there were errors made by the applicant. The final category claims that there were errors made by the City of Tualatin. The appellant's appeal makes claims in 3, sorry, I already read that one, eh? Claim 1, land use application does not meet all applicable criteria. A, failure to send notice to CIOs as required by TDC 32.125B3. There's no basis to invalidate the ARB's approval that alleged deficiencies did not affect the completeness of Lamb application under TDC 32.160, invalidate the neighborhood development meeting under TDC 32.125D, or prejudice the substantial rights of any party. A CIO representative participated early in the process. Multiple mailed and email notices provided ample opportunity over 268 days for public comments prior to the ARB hearing on September 10th, 2025. Exhibit A, page 7 of the staff analysis and findings is applicable. Claim 1B, violation of manufacturing park zone and Tualatin noise ordinance. Yep, thank you. Yep. There is an active city code enforcement investigation that claims of existing noise violations produced by Lamb current operations. Conditions of Rule A25 ensures that any future development under AR 24-0002 will be subject to the same environmental and noise standards upon the project's completion and its operation. Noise violations would be investigated and enforced by the Code Compliance Division. Condition of approval A25 from AR 24-0002 states, the proposed development must comply with the environmental regulations of TDC Chapter 63, including noise. TDC 62.100 from the MP district regulations has a purpose statement which restricts uses from creating objectionable noise and other nuisances that are evaluated and implemented through the environmental regulations of Chapter 63. This is because there is no criteria or definition for the subjective terms like objectionable noise. In the manufacturing zone of or parts of the Tualatin Development Code, creating a reliance on TDC 63.051 noise to regulate the purpose statement in the manufacturing park zone. Because alleged noise issue pertains to existing operations and not to the unbuilt LAM project, it does not constitute grounds for invalidating the September 10th, 2025 Architectural Review Board approval of AR 24-0002. The city can't enforce municipal or development codes on something that is not constructed or operational. Exhibit A, page 25 of the staff analysis and findings and condition of approval A25 will ensure compliance with the noise regulations, and if there is a violation, then code enforcement is the proper authority to enforce the noise violations. Claim 1C, expanded north 108th entrance does not meet new driveway approach criteria. LAM's proposal connects to a yet to be constructed parking area to the northernmost existing drive aisle and driveway on Southwest 108th Avenue. Connecting the north parking lot to an existing driveway does not invalidate the September 10th, 2025 ARB decision approving the development, nor create a need for a new driveway. It is an assumption on the appellant's part that a large number of employees exiting the LAM campus will only use the northernmost driveway from 108th and then turn onto Tualatin Road when there are 6 existing driveways for entering and exiting the site. LAM is not proposing any new driveways on Southwest 108th Avenue. Exhibit A, page 55 through 60 of the staff analysis and findings for AR 24-0002 addresses this claim. Claim 2, errors made by the applicant. Commitments to hold a second neighborhood developer meeting and then not holding it. TDC 32.120 neighborhood developer meetings describes the neighborhood developer meeting process and what is required. Requirements include timing of the neighborhood development meeting after a pre-application meeting is conducted, time and location of the meeting, noticing requirements, and documents that the applicant is required to submit as part of the architectural review application. There's no stated requirements in the TDC or for a second neighborhood developer meeting. The neighborhood developer meeting was held on June 5th, 2024, in accordance with TDC 32.120. Exhibit A, pages 9 and 10 of the staff analysis and findings are applicable to this claim. Claim 2B, traffic impact analysis did not consider additional employee work shifts. The applicant's traffic study used Standard Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE published standard rates for this type of development. Staff are unaware of any plans by LAM to have multiple shifts. In accordance with the city's traffic analysis guidelines, the applicant studied the combination of trip generation and street traffic volume with the highest probability of traffic problems developing. If other shift changes were to be made, the shift changes would be at a time of the day with lower street traffic volumes and thus lower potential for traffic problems. Exhibit A, pages 59 through 61 of the staff analysis and findings are applicable. Claim 2C, claims that traffic and noise are beyond the scope of the architectural review. The architectural review process evaluates proposed unbuilt developments for compliance with applicable standards in TDC Chapter 73A through 73G, with related provisions in Chapters 62, 63, 74, and 75. Under TDC 33.0206, conditions of approval may be applied to ensure adequate public facilities, address development impacts, and implement code requirements. A transportation impact analysis was reviewed by the city engineer, DKS Associates, and ODOT, which all found the study met city and other standards and required no mitigation. And ODOT found that the city and other standards required no mitigation. ODOT concurred that all affected intersections meet mobility standards, acknowledged limited capacity for further improvements along Oregon 99 West, and noted that while signal retiming could enhance flow, it is not considered a mitigation under the ODOT policy. I previously addressed the appellant's claim of noise issues in slide 10, so I won't go back over the claim and how noise violations are addressed. Exhibit A, analysis and findings, address transportation requirements on pages 59 through 61, and noise is discussed on page 25 with the applicable condition of approval, AR 25, regulating future noise violations once the development is constructed under AR 24-0002 and operational. Claim 2D claims that TDC Chapter 62 is not relevant AR criteria. Chapter 62 Manufacturing Park Zone is the zoning district that Lamb's campus is located in and is applicable to the review of AR 24-0002. Chapter 62 lists permitted, conditional, and limited uses, limitations on uses, and development standards such as setbacks. City staff evaluated the proposed development in light of Chapter 62. It's unclear how this would be grounds for reversing the ARB's decision approving AR 24-0002. Exhibit A, analysis and findings, page 22 through 25 are applicable. Claim 3, errors made by the City of Tualatin. A, failure to provide the last 3 pages of Lamb's noise model to the ARB at their hearing. The Lamb Tux expansion environmental noise model is dated September 10th, 2025. The city received this model on Wednesday, September 10th, 2025 at 4:42 p.m., the day of the Architectural Review Board public hearing. This is at a time most staff are having dinner prior to attending a night meeting if they have to attend one. A technical printing issue initially caused the final 3 pages of the 5-page noise model to be omitted, and the ARB was provided all pages for review and consideration prior to their decision to approve AR 24-0002. There is no requirement in the Tualatin Development Code for a formal noise model in either TDC 32.140, applicable submittal, and 33.020 for architectural review submittal materials. Community members may provide additional written and verbal comments during the hearing and up until the close of the public hearing comment portion of the hearing. The timing of the noise model submission does not constitute an error by the city, nor does it provide grounds to reverse the ARB's approval of AR 24-0002. The concern raised by the appellant regarding the timeliness of providing Lamb's noise model is not an architectural review requirement, criterion, or reason to overturn the ARB's decision approving AR 24-0002. Claim 3, unnecessary delays in releasing public records. The appellant made 2 requests for public records, one on July 15th and a second request on July 21st, 2025, that he spotlighted in his written comments for September 8th, 2025, and other comments attached to his comments. This information is found in Exhibit C. The deputy city clerk provided a response on July 15th that new material had not yet been submitted. The city policy for public information requests is that the city shall respond to all requests as soon as practical and without unreasonable delay within 5 business days, or within 5 business days will explain why more time is needed for a full response. Lamb officially submitted materials on July 21st and 22nd, 2025. Access to the updated application materials was provided to the appellant on July 23rd, 2025. The concern raised by the appellant regarding unnecessary delays in release of public information is not a criterion that is reviewed as part of the architectural review process and is not a reason for reversing the approval of the architectural review. TDC 32.310 is the section of the development code applicable to the appeal process. Staff provided a memorandum addressing each of the applicant's claims in more detail. The city did receive additional comments and videos from the appellant and his attorney. The appellant submitted a petition that is in Supplement Exhibit L. The city also received additional testimony from Lamb that is included in the council packet as Supplemental Exhibit M. Finally, we did receive one emailed comment from the appellant on November 7th and 2 additional emailed comments from other individuals that have been made available for the council for their review, consideration, and inclusion in the public record. Hearing notices were sent out to all emailed addresses and street addresses that had provided comments pertaining to Lamb's architectural review. The City Council is asked to make a decision on the appeal or request for a review of the ARB's September 10th, 2025 decision approving AR 24-0002 for Lamb's research expansion proposal. Council may deny the appeal and affirm the Architectural Review Board's September 10th, 2025 decision approving the application with conditions. This would deny the appeal, or approve the appeal and reverse the ARB's AR 24-0002 decision and adopt a written order that clearly states the basis for the council's decision. If the City Council identifies approval criteria that are not satisfied and is inclined to uphold the appeal, it must continue the proceedings to allow the applicant an opportunity to modify the proposal or recommend conditions of approval that would allow the application to be approved. And that ends my long-winded presentation.
All right, thank you. The next step in the public hearing is the entry of additional correspondence received in the record. I believe that's been completed, correct, Kevin?
Your Honor, I believe everything is now in the record that was received.
All right, now I'll invite testimony in the following order. Again, it'll be the proponent, then the appellant, then people in favor of the proposal, and those folks opposed to the proposal, and then we'll wrap up with rebuttal by Lamb. So now invite Lamb Research and or their representatives to the table to present their testimony. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm Ian Sisson, a land use planner with McKenzie, and I have some slides to share, so I will try to pull those up here in just a second. Okay, looks like that's working. Thank you to staff for the very thorough presentation. I'll give a quick overview of some of the considerations for land use. And before I do that, introduce the folks sitting next to me here. We have Jen Otterness with Lamb Research and Dana Kravchuk with Stoll Reeves, our land use counsel. Other folks on the McKenzie team you may hear from this evening. We have Brent Arend, our traffic engineer, and Mike Reeder, one of our architects. And I'll pass it over to Jen to talk about the background of this project.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Jennifer Otterness.
Gotta turn it back on.
and
There you go.
Sorry.
You might want to spin the mic towards you. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Otterness. I'm a facilities director at Lamb Research. I oversee the site master planning for the site. I've had the pleasure of being a part of Lamb's growth over the last 25 years when the site was originally built. We're the largest employer in Tualatin. Our site is just over 75 acres, and we occupy Lamb manufacturing and office buildings. We're a company driven by innovation, and as you are aware, we are looking at expanding our R&D operations. The campus expansion is funded in part by the Oregon CHIPS Act, and the project will bring hundreds of jobs and stimulate local business growth. We've had an outpouring of support, and on the next slide you can read some of the quotes that have been submitted by key officials in support of the project. Regarding the site plan, over the last year we've worked hard to incorporate stakeholder feedback, including neighborhood comments from the neighborhood meetings. In fact, we put the project on hold for months. We shifted proposed buildings to the south, away from the neighborhood, and we closed the 2 proposed driveways that would have spilled out into Tualatin Road. We received unanimous approval at both the IMP and AR hearings, and Lamb will continue their commitment to comply with all local codes and regulations. We take this seriously. It's not only hundreds of millions of dollars in investment into infrastructure, but it's investment into innovation, it's investment into our employees, and it's investment into the communities. We've spent months redesigning and preparing for this project. We are eager to get started. We're excited about the project, and we thank you for your time tonight.
As Jennifer mentioned, there has been a large number of supporters who wrote letters for the project. Here's a list of some of those. One that we're proud of as the project team is a letter of support from Intel, and some of the highlights of that letter spoke to the large number of high-quality jobs provided by Lamb and their investment in the community, advancement of STEM education and workforce development, and that the Tux project will strengthen the U.S. semiconductor supply chain, accelerate innovation in chip making, and help ensure Oregon remains a global hub for semiconductor innovation. This is a recent aerial photo of the Lamb campus outlined in orange, and it shows the addition of Building G there near the south property line on Leviton, and new parking along the eastern property line. So as Keith described, this is a Type 3 architectural review, and the proposal includes an office building, a lab building, a central utilities building, storage building, expanded bulk gas yard, new parking, circulation, and landscaping, and a new driveway for truck access on Leviton Drive. As Jennifer mentioned, there is no longer any access proposed for employees to Tualatin Road. The existing gated emergency access will remain, and that driveway will continue to provide access for the adjacent property, JAE. Also, there's no new access proposed on 108th. This project would continue to use the northernmost access, improving that and connecting it to the new parking areas that are proposed along the northern boundary of the site. Here again is the overall site plan, and as Keith described, the new development is shown in teal color for new building area, the expanded bulk gas yard, and then in dark gray are new parking and drive circulation areas. As for history of this application, 2 applications, including the IMP, we held a pre-application meeting back in June of last year with the city staff, and then a neighborhood meeting also in June, and then submitted the IMP and AR applications July of last year. And as Keith described, we had requested delays to the hearing to make some adjustments to the plans, and then came to the Planning Commission for the approval of the industrial master plan in August of this year, and the Architectural Review Board for approval of AR 24-0002 back in September of this year. For some context in terms of land use and zoning, the property is in the manufacturing park zone and designated as such in the comprehensive plan. One of the goals and some of the implementing policies here are to support business retention and growth, support Tualatin's industrial lands as major local and regional employment centers, and to fully develop planned industrial areas. And then for architectural review, Chapter 33 of the Tualatin Development Code includes an extensive list of purpose statements which are not directly approval criteria for the application, but speak to the reasons for architectural review, which do include supporting local businesses and industry. I will now pass it over to Dana to speak to the approval criteria.
Good evening. My name is Dana Kraftcheck. I'm a land use attorney at Stoll Reeves here on behalf of LAM. Applicable criteria. You hear this in the script. Everyone's instructed to have their comments directed at the approval criteria. Well, why does that matter? There's 2 reasons, I think. One is in a quasi-judicial application like tonight. You've probably heard this before. Your role is you're a judge, right? You consider the rules that are in front of you, you apply the evidence and the facts, and you make a decision. That's very different than when you're in your legislative role making policies. How should things be? This is how it ought to be. This is what I want to happen for my city. This is more of a judge role. That's one reason this matters. I think a bigger picture, kind of macro reason it matters is rules matter. Everyone needs certainty. Everyone deserves certainty. Stakeholders in the community, they deserve to know, what are the rules? What are the standards that are at play here? Employers that want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in your community and bring hundreds of jobs early on need to know, what are the rules? You know, can we make this investment? Can we get these approvals? Well, it depends on what the rules are. That's why it's critically important to have laser focus on what are the approval criteria. No one's trying to dodge anything. No one's trying to say that's not important. What we're trying to do is keep this focus on what are we doing here tonight. It's architectural review is what's at issue this evening. These are the standards, things like materials, things like landscaping, things like height. That's the purpose of this. We're not disputing that the community has valid concerns about systemic, ongoing issues. That's just not architectural review. So I think you're going to hear some frustration, probably from the community, maybe even from the applicant, maybe in staff's mind, I'm not sure. It's because I think people are going to think they're not being heard. Well, they're not being heard because this is the wrong place to raise those issues. And so that's going to be a theme that you're going to be hearing from me, being a lawyer in the room, telling you. It's not that those aren't important issues. It's not that they're not valid. We're not opining on that. We're just saying that this is not the forum to bring those concerns up. So that's a long-winded introduction. Can you go to the next slide? So related to that, what's the scope of even what's before you? So separate and apart from the approval criteria, concerns about the existing development, that's not in front of you. If there are issues with the existing development, the exclusive forum is code enforcement. That's not me saying that. That's what your municipal code says. Your municipal code provides very detailed processes that could ultimately end up in front of a circuit court judge. That's the forum for existing development. The proposed development, the office building, the research lab, that's what we're talking about tonight. Speculation about what could happen next in the future, not relevant tonight. That would be subject to its own process. Going back to approval criteria, and I'm going to get a little in the weeds here. Not every single thing in your development code is an approval standard. Not every single thing in your municipal code is an approval standard. An obvious example is procedural sections. That's not an approval criteria. But as relevant here, there's really 3 different categories of standards out there. One are the mandatory approval standards. We talked about those as development standards in our materials. We have to meet those in order to get approved. And if we can't show that they're met with our proposal, we have to show that it's feasible for those standards to be met. So things like what percentage of your site is landscaped. We have to meet that, and we have. The other category is performance standards. As the name implies, those are standards that apply once the use is actually operational. They're sometimes referred to as operational standards. The noise standards are performance standards. They don't apply up front. They apply only once the use is operational. Why does that matter? A performance standard does not need to be met before you can approve the permit. You approve the permit, you impose a condition of approval that says you better comply with those performance standards, which you've done. And once we're up and operational, if we don't comply with the performance standards, then enforcement is the appropriate form. The final kind of category of standards are what are called aspirational purpose statements. Your code includes in the beginning of every zone, in the front of architectural review, a purpose statement. It kind of explains, why are we here? What are we doing in this zone as part of architectural review? That is not an approval criteria. Case law over decades has held that. Those purpose statements are helpful to help you interpret how to apply the mandatory approval standards, but they are not in and of themselves approval criteria. Why are you getting this 101 lesson in land use standards? Well, because a lot of the testimony that's been submitted into the record and that you're likely to hear this evening is going to toss around a bunch of words. Objectionable noise, noise disturbance. You have to ask yourself, what's the source of that standard? Is it a mandatory approval standard? The answer is no. Then it's not an approval criterion. It's probably a performance standard. And what that means is, if you're putting on your legislative hat or your policy-making hat, of course you're going to be concerned about noise, but it's not your job to enforce noise. That's your enforcement folks, and that's outside of the scope of this application. So we've organized the grounds for appeal a little bit differently than how they were presented, and we're not going to go into a bunch of detail. We've categorized them thematically, so procedural questions, noise issues, and traffic issues.
Got to control it from here.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure how to do that.
Just the arrow key.
Okay. On the procedural issues, I'm not going to go into detail in this, but there's this general rule if there's an allegation of a procedural error, and it's essentially no harm, no foul. And what that means is if the person's substantial rights have not been prejudiced, then a minor procedural error is excusable. What does substantial rights mean? It means the right to fully participate and prepare for a public hearing. The appellant has participated verbally, in writing, over almost a year now. So these allegations of things like the CIO only got emailed notice and not mailed notice of the pre-development meeting, that does not rise to the level of a procedural error that can be the basis for denying this project. Okay, the noise issues. You know, I really thought this evening about how much detail to go into in noise, because the bottom line is, as a performance standard, it's not applicable. But we know that's what the community cares about. And so before the ARB, we provided a number of noise studies to address these community concerns. And I feel like it's sucked us down this rabbit hole of things that aren't applicable to architectural review. And so I'm going to go into some detail, but keep that in mind, that a lot of this information is to provide balance to some of the testimony that's been provided, and so that you're aware of how very seriously Lamb and the city are taking the noise issues. But again, they're not part of the approval criteria. So in architectural review, these mandatory development standards are in section 73 of your code, A through G. Where the noise standards reside are in chapter 63. And that is the section of the code that has these very generally applicable performance standards. Your code does give you the authority to impose conditions of approval that if those conditions are necessary for the project to comply with mandatory development standards. The city has imposed a condition that requires compliance with performance standards. We're not disputing that. That's as far as you need to go. Even though it's not required, the applicant provided evidence of both the existing development, its compliance with the noise standard, and the proposed development. And all of this was provided to the ARB and the record. And we took it kind of in three chunks, because as this process was unfolding, we had our noise expert evaluate the evidence that had been provided. So some of the neighbors provided an acoustic survey that took a noise measurement from a home across the street from Lamb's property one evening. And that survey measured a noise level at 52 decibels. And the standard's 50 decibels. And so we got a lot of testimony about all the violations that Lamb is currently in. So we had our noise expert evaluate that acoustic study first. And that expert said, we're not disputing the measurement that was taken, but there were defects in the methodology. Basically, they couldn't connect the dots between that outcome and that it came from Lamb. And there was a lot of technical reasons why. So why does that matter? Well, if you were the circuit court judge or the enforcement officer ruling on this, you would consider and weigh this evidence. But for purposes of this evening, we think that this sort of difference in opinion in the experts is enough to show you that it is not a foregone conclusion that Lamb's existing facility is in violation. The next thing we asked our expert to do is to see, in their own opinion, whether Lamb's facilities were in compliance with the noise standards. So task one was evaluate the evidence that's been provided. Task two was go out there and measure it on your own. And Lamb's noise expert went out in the evening during the quiet periods and took a lot of measurements pursuant to the methodology in the noise code, pursuant to accepted methodologies for DEQ. And they found that at every location, the noise standards were met. DEQ's standards has regulations in addition to decibels. They regulate hertz, and there were some high-frequency noises. That was crickets. Those were the only things that were in excess of DEQ standards. All of Lamb's facilities met the decibel and hertz standards. We then asked the consultant to go one step further and do some modeling of the proposed project in isolation, and then the proposed project in addition to the existing facilities. And that modeling shows, again, compliance is occurring and compliance is expected. What this noise signature shows you and it's a little hard to read, but the green is basically the areas where it will be 50 decibels or less. And you can see that there is a red outline. That red is where the decibel level would be higher than 50 decibels, but that's all within Lamb's property and all on industrial property. So to the residential area to the north, it is well within the regulated noise levels. So again, none of this is relevant to the approval tonight, but we don't want to ignore what we know a lot of people in this room care about. And this is something that we expect that the enforcement officer is taking very seriously. Why is it confusing, for us to be talking about this? Why are we talking about something irrelevant other than just we don't want people to feel ignored? I think, though, litigating this in front of this body is confusing. Exhibit K has testimony to the to the enforcement officer complaining about how the enforcement proceeding is going. Are you supposed to do something about that? No, because this is a different body. This body is really evaluating only architectural review. I think these are just really tangible examples of why it's important to stay in your lane in terms of what standards you're applying, and the performance standard is not really applied as part of this process. So this is just my conclusion. Even though compliance with the noise standards is not a criterion, they're performance standards, we've given you plenty of evidence to show that we are currently complying with the noise standards, and the project is feasible for it to comply. The next section is traffic issues. So we're going to call our traffic expert up here to talk about that. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to hold them until the end, that works too.
You will hold them.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Brent Arend. I'm a traffic engineer with McKenzie, and I prepared the traffic analysis that was submitted with the application, supplemental letter for the AR hearing, and then the November 7th letter that I think you all have, addressing some of the appellant's concerns. Okay. The appellant has provided a lot of testimony related to the access on 108th, and there is a gate there, but the gate is open during business hours, and it's available for everyone to use, although that existing north access is rarely used currently. And historically, it's been little used as well. At build-out, we estimate the access will serve about 6% of campus trips. So about 50 trips in the peak hour is all that will use that driveway. By comparison, there's other driveways that will have 4 to 5 times that volume, the ones that's down on Leviton, for example. There's no new access on 108th. This north access has been in existence since 2001. And the 2 other accesses on 108th were constructed with the Building G project. And those are open now. And then staff's documented this is an existing driveway and provided findings to demonstrate the applicable criteria in conjunction with the proposed development have been met. And my letter goes into detail. I won't speak to all the issues, but all the reasons why this driveway meets, operations with spacing, et cetera. So it complies with all the standards of Chapter 75. And there was no connection between the new parking for Building G and this driveway, and no connection is proposed with this application. If it had been, then you'd see higher volumes on that. We're intending to limit it to the parking in that new north access is really all that will use this. So just for historical reference, this is the master plan from 2001, and and I actually worked on this project. And you can clearly see that parking was always planned at the north side of the campus, up near the intersection of Tualatin and 108th. And yeah, there were 2 driveways planned at that time. There are 3 today. But that north driveway there is very close to where that existing north driveway exists. So just to give you a little background on that. And this is a photo from actually 2002, after what we called phase 1 back then of the campus. Those 4 buildings on the east side were constructed, and that access was provided at that time. So clarification of impacts. So a lot of concerns been raised by the appellants about how this access will impact Tualatin Road. And what we've estimated is about 10% of the new trips, or about 25 trips in the peak hour, would actually find their way onto Tualatin Road between 108th and 115th, the main area of concern, right? And up to 10 of those trips would find their way down Hazelbrook to the 99W intersection. Now, our hope is that none of the trips cut through the neighborhood, but being realistic, we know that some will. And based on what the volumes are today that we see, these are our best estimates, and those were confirmed by the city and their consultant. And then, as I go into detail in my November 7th letter, we obtained a count at the end of October for 108th and Tualatin Road, which, now that substantial completion is done at Tualatin Sherwood Road, it actually shows less through traffic on Tualatin Road. And it shows a small increase in traffic turning to and from 108th, which is likely related to occupancy of Building G, which has 500 employees now. At the time of the counts, we did counts in spring and spring of 24, and then again in spring of 25, just so we had more current counts. That represents about 10% of the trips for Building G. So it's right in line with what we had estimated. So I'm very confident in that 25 trip number. So then there was testimony about the elevated crash rate. Well, there were 5 crashes over 5 years at 108th and Tualatin. There was one crash reported in the same 5 years at the Tualatin and 115th intersection. So first of all, I want to be clear that we can only go by crashes that are reported. Doesn't mean that that's how many there were. It's just what was reported and documented. But both intersections have crash rates that are below the average and below the thresholds where you would need to look to mitigation. So while it's true that we reported a crash rate that was about 5 times as high, neither one is above that threshold, and no mitigation would be needed. And then there was also testimony about the impact of cut-through trips past the school area on 115th and Hazelbrook, causing additional conflicts with the school traffic. At the peak hour in the afternoon, where we would see those cut-through trips trying to leave the campus and go to 99, that's after 4:30. So well after the school gets out, which I believe is just after 3 p.m., like at 3:10, if I recall correctly. So those trips, again, they'd be about 10, and they'd be well after the peak of the school. So again, the impacts on Tualatin Road. So there is congestion there, but we did, in my letter, I addressed how the volumes have gone down now that construction is complete, essentially for Tualatin Sherwood Road. It's about 125 in the AM and about 350 in the PM. So as was noted before, Lamb went away from direct access to Tualatin Road based in part on the neighbor concerns, and that's significantly reduced the potential for impacts on Tualatin Road. Again, about 25 trips, and like I said, 125 reduction in the PM peak hour and 350 in the AM. And I pointed out that the reduction just from the construction being done on Tualatin Sherwood Road is a larger reduction than what Lamb would add to the roadway. So again, both the city and their consultant and ODOT all agree that, the traffic analysis shows that all the intersections would be in conformance with Tualatin's requirements, and they agree with the conclusions. ODOT also concurs. Intersections on Highway 99, they're close to capacity. There's not much more you can do. And especially at Hazelbrook, they agree that it doesn't make sense to mitigate that location because that would only encourage more cut-through traffic through the neighborhood if you actually improve those delays of turning right onto 99W, and we don't want to do that. The other thing I would mention here is that while that particular approach of Hazelbrook to 99 has long delays and may not meet the operational standards of the city or ODOT, ODOT's focus is on the highway flow and keeping that in line with their standards, and that's what ODOT is concerned about. You probably all know there's a lot of side streets that have long delays and long queues, and they don't warrant a signal or any other mitigation. That's just kind of the way it is. You maintain the flow on the main line. So ODOT said no further analysis of the facilities is required. So we had actually recommended a couple improvements, even though nothing was required. One of them, as been mentioned before, was to try to improve the left turn coordination on 124th between Highway 99 and Tualatin Road by improving the timing. ODOT may or may not do that, and the county operates the signal for the city, so it's kind of up to them to agree to do that. Well, that was our recommendation. Whether or not they do, again, that's up to them, but I think it would help to improve the flow if they could. But it still meets the standards either way. And then the second was just to make sure that sight distances are available from each of the driveways and intersections. So in conclusion, the application demonstrates compliance with all the applicable criteria. Use of the existing north access with the proposed modifications to widen it is what we're modifying it to do. It meets the applicable criteria for width, spacing, safety, and impacts. Everything in Chapter 75 is met. And the city will review that in detail when they look at the construction plans. And the traffic study complies with TDC's 74-440.
I think that's the end of our presentation. Oh, yeah, just our summary. Again, we've been up here a long time. Any questions for us?
I'm going to hold the questions till.
Oh, okay, the end. Okay, not just the end of our presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a short bio break before the appellant and their representative comes up, so 5 minutes, about 5-minute break.
And Your Honor, I just remind the council not to have any conversations with any interested party in the audience while you're on break.
Thank you for your patience on the break. I'm going to go ahead and reconvene the meeting and invite Brett Hamilton and or his representatives to the table. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Bubenik and city councilors. My name is Brett Hamilton. I live on Kalispell Street, and I'm the appellant. And this is my attorney, Mr. Mulkey.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So I think the noise issue is well documented and very clear. So tonight I'd like to focus on 4 aspects of the traffic: necessity, adverse impacts, peak volume, and safety. The most important number in Lamb's traffic study is the total added daily site trips, and that's 2,036, and that number has stayed consistent for this whole time. That's new site trips as a result of the Tux project. And Lamb estimates that 10% of that traffic will turn at 108th on Tualatin Road. So 10% of 2,036 is 203 cars per day entering and exiting Tualatin Road at 108th. And tonight I will demonstrate that this proposal is both dangerous and unnecessary. As far as I can tell, Lamb has never, in the last 17 months, attempted to demonstrate that they actually need this entrance at 108th. If you've seen in our video, you know that Leviton Drive has more than enough room to handle all the Tux traffic. So if Lamb doesn't open this 108th entrance to employees, they will be just fine. What we are asking for will not put Lamb in any hardship. Lamb's most recent traffic letter says that the city is looking for ways to reduce the amount of commuter traffic cutting through our neighborhood. Well, opening the 108th will absolutely encourage Lamb's employees to cut through our neighborhood by going down 115th right into the path of the Hazelbrook Middle School students. And I'll address the traffic peak hour in a second. The best way to discourage this cut through is simply to keep the 108th access closed to employee traffic. And the city absolutely has the authority and the justification to do that. Adverse impacts. Lamb claims that the 108th North axis will not cause significant adverse impacts to the vicinity, but their data shows that it will. For example, the Hazelbrook on-ramp to Highway 99, it absolutely is in the vicinity of the Land campus. It's 1,500 feet away. That's why the Hazelbrook on-ramp was included in the traffic study. Lamb's added traffic will cause this on-ramp to fail to meet performance standards, and there's no doubt that that would qualify as a significant adverse impact to the vicinity. So peak traffic volume. So Lamb is showing, as we said, 203 added trips per day at the 108th intersection. At the same time, they are claiming that their peak traffic load at this intersection will be less than 25 cars per hour. So 25 is only 12% of that total daily volume. And so I've been wondering, how on earth can you get 25 cars in the max peak hour to reach 230 cars in the whole day? But the numbers actually add up, because it would take 8 hours of peak traffic to reach the total, which I thought was like, that's impossible, but it turns out that's exactly what's going on. So just like rush hour, which is, as we know, more than like 3 hours long, Lamb's commuter traffic is spread out over many hours also. So looking at just 1 a.m. hour and 1 p.m. hour ignores the other 76% of their added traffic volume. So Lamb's traffic is not concentrated in a peak or a peak hour. It's spread over a plateau that is many hours long, just like rush hour. So safety. The intersection of 108th is not a safe place to send 200 more cars per day, primarily because of the site distance issues. Using Lamb's numbers from their traffic study, I want to quantify just how dangerous it is turning at 108th compared to 115th. We've all used 115th at Tualatin Road, so hopefully you all know what that intersection is like. It carries 4 times the amount of peak turning traffic as 108th does. And that makes a lot of sense because a lot of people turn at 115th already. And Lamb's data agrees with this lived experience. So by comparison, not many people turn at 108th because they know it's dangerous, but just how dangerous is it? So right now, as was mentioned before, the yearly crash rate is 5 times higher at 108th than 115th. But that's not the whole story. 108th only carries 1/4 of the amount of turning traffic. And if you combine those two factors, the number that really matters is the crash rate per turning car. And that's what we want to look at, is apples to apples. On 108th, the crash rate per turning car is 20 times higher than that same rate on 115th. Not 20%, 20 times. That means that if you turn from 108th to Tualatin Road, your risk of getting in an accident is 20 times the risk of that same turn at 115th. And this matches up with experience. 108th is dangerous to turn out. Every time I do it, I think to myself, why am I going this way? Adding more traffic from Lamb to this intersection will increase the number of crashes. And it's not just going to be dangerous for the people who are courageous or crazy enough to turn at 108th. It will be dangerous for every single car traveling along Tualatin Road who has to go through that intersection. And for those of us who live here, we don't have another route. We have to cross that intersection. Tualatin Road is our only road for local access, and adding more Lamb traffic here will be dangerous and unnecessary. So let's look at how traffic volume and safety interact with each other. Lamb claims that adding 25 cars per peak hour at Tualatin Road at 108th is not a big share of the total traffic road to Tualatin Road total volume. But their problem with their position is that all 25 of Lamb's trips at that intersection are going to be turning, not going straight. And that's the crux of this issue. Lamb is comparing cars turning to cars going straight through, and that is apples to oranges. The best way to evaluate this intersection is to compare the amount of turning traffic now versus after the proposal, and that's when the danger happens. The amount of traffic turning at 108th right now in the peak hour is 91 in the morning and 66 in the afternoon. Lamb is proposing to add to those hours an additional 25 cars turning here. That's a 27 to 33% increase in the amount of turning traffic at 108th and Tualatin Road. And that's the issue. As a result, we can expect a 27 to 33% increase in traffic accidents at this intersection because the traffic turning is what causes the accidents, not the cars going straight through. And this is a significant adverse traffic on the nearby residential zone properties, everyone who has to take that street, and the adjacent streets. So to summarize, 108th is just a bad place to access Tualatin Road. And the thought of Lamb sending 200 more cars per day through this intersection is just a really bad idea. That is why the city is absolutely justified in issuing an access restriction to just keep 108th closed to employee traffic. Thank you for your time, thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you for considering our position.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Andrew Mulkey. Just for reference, my P.O. box is on the letters that I've submitted, but it's 66562, Portland, Oregon, zip code 67290. I'd like to begin by addressing some of the arguments and statements made by the applicant's counsel about kind of characterizing what many of the noise criteria as simply performance standards. I disagree with that characterization, and I don't believe that it's supported by the plain language in the development code. After all, these are criteria that apply to the development of industrial projects, as stated in Chapter 63. And I'd like to remind the council that these are development code standards. They're in the development code. They are not in the municipal code, or they're not in the section of the code that talks about code enforcement for existing uses. I also want to point out that the reference to these standards, the development code does reference the enforcement code standards, but it says development and uses must comply with these standards. And I believe that the time to address that is currently now, because I don't think that it makes a lot of policy sense. I don't believe that that's how the code was designed or intended to be drafted, to simply allow a use to be approved without any understanding of the noise that it could cause, and then go in after the fact and say, oh gosh, you're really violating our noise ordinance here. We have to bring an enforcement action, or we have to shut you down, essentially. I don't believe that that's not a very logical way to craft a development code. You should know, the city should know what's going in before it issues approval for that use. And so to that end, there's some points that I do agree with the applicant's counsel on, is that the applicant must show that it's feasible to meet these standards, whether you call them performance standards or just simply standards that you need to meet for the purpose of approving the use. And that is where the applicant has really fallen short here. Yes, they've provided a model, but I'll point out that the modeling study was done, I believe, looking at noise 5 feet above ground level. Well, that's not what the members of the community who live near the existing plant and facilities are talking about. They're talking about noise at the rooftop level that travels, it's not blocked by a building. It travels far into the neighborhoods, and you can hear it. It's a humming, a pulsing noise. You can also hear a hissing noise. And depending on the weather, it's stronger or weaker. But there are times where that noise is very prevalent. And so we've submitted, yes, a noise complaint into the record, but no one is asking you to enforce that noise complaint here, but how it is relevant to you is it shows the types of noises that Lamb's facilities and their equipment create. These are not necessarily noises, at least farther into the neighborhood, that exceed the loud noise definition or the 50 decibel level, but they would qualify as a noise disturbance. And that is specifically referenced in the development standards in Chapter 63 as what the uses and development that are being approved in this zone and industrial uses have to comply with. So you have to show compliance, and that compliance is feasible before you get approval for development, before you get approval for building. And that is simply so that you don't want to end up in a situation where an applicant spends lots of money and invests lots of time and money to build something that is simply going to result in a noise complaint and a violation of the noise ordinances of the city. So that's the practical reason why this needs to be considered now, in addition to the legal reasons of showing that the applicant has to show that it's feasible to meet those standards now before it constructs and as it gains approval. Finally, or not finally, but I guess the next point I'd like to make on this topic is that it's really the applicant's burden here to show that it can meet these criteria, and what it's provided in the record is simply not sufficient. The applicant is the person who, they know what equipment they're going to be installing, they know where the noise is coming from. They've been made aware of the noises that come from their current facilities, and they have the knowledge and the expertise to understand, all right, what noises need to be canceled out, what humming and pulsing is being heard in the neighborhoods, how do we cancel that out at the facility so that it's not traveling those distances. And yet, we haven't seen that information. What we have is a modeling study that looks at noise produced at 5 feet above ground level. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the concern. They've failed to address the combination of noise from the existing facilities and noise that would be built from their new facilities. And and then I'd like to point out that what appellant is asking for here is not unreasonable. It's not for a denial of the plant itself, although technically one of the things we have asked for is denying it if they cannot address these issues. But overall, it's that, no, the zone allows this type of use, but the applicant needs to show that it's going to be able to comply with all of these noise criteria, and they have not done so. However, one thing that could be imposed is a condition that requires Lamb to evaluate the noise that's going to be coming, at rooftop and determine what types of equipment are actually currently causing the humming and pulsing and hissing noises, which they haven't done, but that's something they could do. And then to simply, if those noises are going to be replicated in the current facility, in order to meet the criteria in Chapter 63, to say you need to provide a proposal that will cancel out those noises or otherwise mitigate them so that they're not traveling into the neighborhoods and disturbing people. So again, I believe that all of those are very reasonable conditions of approval to impose, and that the AR board, and by virtue of their authority, the city council has the ability to impose those criteria. And the specific manner in which you have that authority has been explained both in my letter and actually the applicant's letter. I think we're pointing to the same approval criteria standard there, that you have the authority to impose restrictions and conditions of approval that ensure that the applicant meets all the applicable criteria. And before moving on to traffic, because it's related to this, I just want to point out that the purpose of the AR board, I mean, it's a little bit of a misnomer, at least to me as I read it, that it's the Architectural Review Board. However, their purpose is much broader than just simply the way a building looks. In their purpose statement, it says that one of the goals of the AR board is just to, and this is particularly relevant here where we're talking about noise and traffic, but to sustain the comfort, health, safety, tranquility, and contentment of residents, to attract new residents, and thereby to promote and protect the peace, health, and welfare of the city. So within this, the AR board does have the authority to require, impose conditions of approval to ensure compliance with the requirements of the Tualatin Development Code. Again, that includes Chapter 63. And if noise were simply something that was to be considered after the fact, it wouldn't need to be written in the development code because the municipal code already takes care of it. It wouldn't have even needed to be mentioned, but the fact that it is mentioned here, it's mentioned not only in Chapter 63, it's also mentioned in Chapter 62, where the purpose statement says that the uses allowed here must not cause objectionable noise emanating from the property. And so that, I think, is where, certainly where appellant disagrees with the applicant's interpretation of the code, and I would say also disagrees somewhat with the staff's interpretation of the code, because those provisions are relevant, and they need to be applied here, and the applicant needs to show that it can meet them, or that it's at least feasible to meet them. You heard that very same standard from their attorney, and that's something that they've not done here. And it's simply a matter of them failing to meet their burden in this case. Again, for as much as noise was mentioned in these earlier proceedings, it seems like the evidence that the applicant has proposed or submitted related to the noise comes kind of at the last minute. It came, just at the AR board hearing, and now they come to this proceeding and they say, oh, none of this is relevant. We just did that as a courtesy. So I disagree, and I believe that you have the authority to disagree as well with that position. Finally, for traffic, I want to point out some of the facts that the applicants made or stated in its presentation, specifically related to the northernmost access way that we've all been talking about on 108th Avenue. That access was built in 2001, apparently. It's not clear. We don't have a permit in the record that approved that access way, so it's not clear what its purpose was and the extent of the use that was actually going to be allowed through that access point. The applicant has said that currently it's rarely used, and it appears that maybe it's only used for construction contractors or providing additional emergency access. And we also heard that it's not currently connected to much of anything. It's not clear to me quite what it is or is not connected to, but it sounds like it's not connected to the main parking lots that are appellant's concerned right now, nor is it connected to the proposed parking lots, but that it would be in the future. And so it's that concern that access is going to be used as part of LAM's facility expansion. Now, why is that a concern? So there's evidence in the record that the crash rate at the intersection of 108 and Tualatin Road is above average. Now, the applicant pointed out it doesn't meet the 90% or 90th percentile threshold that the ODOT would say requires further study. However, there's enough to show that it is a higher risk intersection than other intersections of its type. And again, we know that more trips will go through that intersection if it's allowed to be used for this expansion. And we know that that is going to potentially expose people to greater risk of crash in doing that. We also know that there's a risk of, or that there's a current practice of cut through from Tualatin Road up 115th and to Hazelbrook and then on to 99. That currently occurs and that the occurrence of that will increase with the expansion of the use of that northernmost access on 108. So all of those kind of facts provide enough evidence for this body to conclude that there is a significant adverse impact to the vicinity of relying on this northernmost access for Lamb's expansion. And so, again, it's not a matter of asking you to deny the facility or deny the expansion. It's simply what appellant is asking for, and what I think many people in the community are asking for, is simply a reasonable condition of approval that says, look, we know that there's going to be these increased risks associated with the use of this northernmost access point. You really haven't told us that it's necessary for your expansion. It's just something that's there and happens. You're going to be using it. So why not have a condition of approval that says don't connect it? Continue to be able to use it for construction contractor use and emergency vehicle access, but don't connect it to the main parking lots that are going to be the source of these additional employee trips that were analyzed in the TIA. So leave it unconnected and therefore avoid those significant adverse impacts to the vicinity, not only increasing the number of trips through above average risky intersection, and also, I think causing or contributing towards more trips at an intersection, that being the Hazeldale and Oregon 99 intersection, that is already bound capacity. And finally, having the added benefit of not causing additional cut through of the local neighborhood by other employees that are exiting through that 108 access point. Finally, I just want to point out this is kind of a technical issue, but that I believe that many of the findings related to these issues from noise and traffic, specifically related to the issues related to the 108 intersection or the 108 access point, and the additional noise are simply conclusory. They say, Lamb will meet these criteria, of course, but it doesn't explain why or what evidence shows that Lamb will meet the criteria. And so for those reasons, they're simply not adequate to support a decision in this case. And then finally, I'm also concerned that a number of the traffic-related conditions of approval are asking Lamb, I apologize, I can't remember, and I didn't write it down off the top of my head, but many of the conditions say, we'll refer to like 3, 11, and 16 or something. And those are the conditions of approval that are going to show that we meet all these traffic-related impacts and requirements. My concern is that the way those conditions are written is that they're going to allow Lamb to submit evidence of compliance with those conditions of approval after the fact, after the close of this public hearing, and that there will be no, basically, ability of the public to view what's being submitted and also to ensure that they are going to be meeting these otherwise like discretionary criteria that I think require the application of judgment and really should be subject to what this proceeding is, which is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and it's not clear to me that those standards will be met in that case. So again, I believe that appellant's ask here is certainly within the scope of the development code, and this city council is well within its authority to require and impose these conditions of approval that appellant is seeking. Again, what I think very reasonable, considering the use that's being proposed here. Tell us what noises your equipment is going to be producing and your facilities are going to be producing. Tell us how you're going to mitigate them to ensure that you can meet compliance with these criteria that are listed in Chapter 63. And then finally, simply don't expand the use of the existing access on the northernmost access for 108th, and to avoid the increase in traffic risk associated with that access way. Thank you. And I guess if you have any questions, we're happy to answer any of them. I'm not sure.
We'll do it at the end.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this now brings us to testimony from folks who wish to testify in favor of the proposal. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I have several folks signed on in support of LAM's application. So I'll do that first, but you do not have to be signed up, but I will take the sign-ups first. First sign-up I have is Annalia Jackson from the Tualatin Area Chamber of Commerce.
Hello again, Mayor and councilors. On September 18th, the Chamber of Commerce brought Oregon Business and Industries' Angela Wilhelms to the Tualatin Country Club for a Key Leaders Breakfast to talk about Oregon's competitiveness agenda. And what we learned there that day was that Oregon's 2025 ranking for business friendliness was 47th in the country, 47th. The 3 problems that we need to address, she said, were Oregon is an expensive place in which to live and operate a business. Oregon creates unnecessary obstacles to success. Oregon's political culture undervalues the private sector. LAM, as a business in Tualatin, is so incredibly powerful and important to this city. They are Tualatin's largest employer with thousands of full-time employees and contractors. The Tux expansion project represents hundreds of millions of dollars in investment across Tualatin, Washington County, and Oregon. This company has such a community commitment. They've been part of the community for over 20 years. Beyond jobs and investment, LAM supports local STEM education, girls' leadership programs, and housing assistance for under-resourced families. Their long-standing record shows they are responsible and engaged, and an engaged corporate partner. Not only that, but the membership in our business community for the Chamber voted LAM for their excellent work in the industry, the incredible workforce they employ, and their generosity to the community. In the Tualatin Area Chamber of Commerce business membership voted LAM Research Business Leader of the Year in 2024. I can't say enough about how incredibly important this company is to this city. And when we were sitting in that breakfast with Angela Wilhelms and they were hearing all these problems with LAM, a Vancouver city councilman stood up and said, listen, we'll give anything to have LAM. LAM, listen to us. Come see us. We will make it easy for you to come across the river. Is that what this city wants? These citizens must understand that LAM research is critically important to the Tualatin, critically important. I'm here tonight because the Chamber of Commerce, their mission is to support, to promote, and to advocate for the businesses of Tualatin. And the reason that we do that, and I feel so strongly about it, is because I love this city and I love these citizens. And without our business community, we won't have the resources to keep this city as beautiful as it is. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Next I have Monique, Greater Portland, Inc.
Good evening. I'm Mayor, City Council. My name is Monique Claiborne. I'm the CEO and President of Greater Portland, Inc., the public-private partnership responsible for strengthening charter sector job growth across the Portland-Vancouver region. Our work is centered on helping employers grow, helping communities thrive, and ensuring that this region remains competitive in the global economy. Lamb Research embodies exactly what that mission looks like in practice. Lamb has been an anchor employer in Tualatin for more than 2 decades, and today they are the city's largest private employer with more than 3,800 full-time employees and contractors. Their tools power nearly every computer chip in the world, yet they choose to innovate, invest, and expand right here in this community. Lamb's commitment to Oregon goes far beyond the walls of their facilities. They have invested STEM programs for local students, supported skill-building initiatives for girls in underserved communities, and partnered on culturally specific housing stability programs, demonstrating their depth as a community partner as well as a global industry leader. The project before you today is a continuation of that commitment. The Tux project represents hundreds of millions of dollars in regional investment, strengthening U.S. semiconductor manufacturing, improving supply chain resilience, and generating high-wage jobs and new opportunities for local suppliers and vendors. It aligns with the governor's priorities with statewide semiconductor strategy and with the regional economic goals GPI advances with partners across the public and private sectors. Lamb has worked thoughtfully and collaboratively with staff and agencies. This proposal meets the relevant approval criteria and its forward-looking growth that's consistent with Tualatin's economic future. On behalf of Greater Portland, Inc., I offer strong support for Lamb's expansion. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Thank you. Next up, I have Elizabeth, Westside Economic Alliance.
Good evening, members of the council. Mayor Bubinic, nice to see you. For the record, Elizabeth Mazar-Myers, Executive Director of the Westside Economic Alliance. We have submitted written testimony. WEA is an organization that advocates for business throughout our region, but our difference is that we bring together the private sector and public sector, along with labor and nonprofits, to have the hard policy conversation about what it takes to create a vibrant and sustainable economy. Since I've submitted the written testimony that are specific to the project, I want to take a moment to place tonight's hearing in the context of what's happening across our regional and state economy. As of September, statewide, we are seeing layoffs at the level of 500 to 600 a month, numbers not seen since the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009. From Q2 of 2024 to Q2 of 2025, the private sector in Oregon lost 11,000 jobs. Lost, shed, those are gone. And then, of course, the University of Oregon report from earlier this year. My colleagues talked about business retention and folks from Vancouver luring our businesses. 400 businesses were interviewed by University of Oregon. 26% of those talked about having been approached by out-of-state recruiters. Of that 26%, 68% either left Oregon or expanded elsewhere. These are real numbers. We should all be really afraid of this. And it's more than that. Our friends at IBEW Local 48, these are electrical workers, they have an out-of-work list that just hit 1,000. It's the same for the plumbers and steam fitters, sheet metal workers. Everybody's seeing their out-of-work list grow. And I can tell you on my way to work this morning, As I've seen in so many weeks in the past, my local food pantry, there's a line out that food pantry before the door even opens. This project is happening on land zoned for industrial use. It's an expansion of a current campus that will add 600 permanent jobs plus the 400 to 600 construction workers that need to finish the build out. These jobs are needed as soon as we can create them in our region. And at a time when businesses are taking offers to leave the state or expand elsewhere, this is a business who's choosing to expand here, choosing to invest in this community, and choosing to expand our local workforce. When businesses seek to expand in our region and they are good neighbors who listen to and respond to their community, we should be encouraging them, not putting up roadblocks. We've heard about the different things that LAM has done in regards to investment in the community, so I won't repeat those. But I will say, we have to remember in regards to this project, LAM did go back to the drawing board and reconsider their campus build out. They changed the road traffic plans that they had put together. Thank you. Look, at WA, we believe that a vibrant economy includes businesses that help move folks to and through the middle class. This is a project that will help us do that. Thank you.
Any other folks in the room who would like to testify in favor of the application? Basically, everybody in Zoom. All right. I'll now switch over to those persons interested in testifying in opposition to the proposal. I have one person signed up, but again, you don't have to be signed up, but I will take this person first. Marius Breeson.
Good evening. My name is Marius Bryson. I live on 113th Avenue, just north of the LAM campus of Tualatin Road. I'll try to keep under 3 minutes. Yes, we need the jobs tremendously. And yes, we need the property taxes into the city coffer. And yes, we need Tualatin to expand and become a livable city. Yes, also LAM removed the 2 roads originally planned on their proposal at 115th and 112th. However, at this point, I oppose the current LAM plan for expansion for the 2 main reasons already mentioned: the increased traffic on Tualatin Road and the current noise condition, plus the future noise conditions that they're going to affect thousands of people living off Tualatin Road on the north side. The expansion of the campus should be approved once these 2 topics are negotiated and mitigated. I would like to point out that when LAM had the only community meeting in spring of 2024, they had the 2 roads on Tualatin Road access, plus the buildings and all that. By the time it got submitted to the city, and we had another meeting to review it this year, the plan completely changed. And community had no chance to review it ahead of time. Nothing happened for 12 months. Community was not involved, and we didn't know that they completely shifted their buildings to the south of the campus. I wonder why, because they are going to make too much noise for the community. And they removed the 2 roads, realizing the accidents they are going to produce. Also, I would like to point out that they are ready to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, probably $1 billion by the end of the project, on this campus. And a lot of that, I don't know how much, but I would guess 20% at least, comes from Oregon CHIPS Act and the federal IRA implemented by previous administration. And all we're asking is pennies of measures to negotiate the traffic and the noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to testify in opposition that's in the room? Come on up. Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Sure. Good evening. Name is Russell Street, 10085 Southwest Hazelbrook Road. And anybody in our neighborhood already knows traffic is ugly getting onto Tualatin Road. I don't believe anyone here is opposed to Lamb expanding, growing, being a good employer, being a good tax base for the city. All we're trying to do is put some controls on their traffic to keep our neighborhoods safe and livable. There is Leventon Road, which is a industrial type road that connects to Tualatin Sherwood Road and 99. It is in a industrial area, so if their traffic goes down, Lamb's traffic goes down to Levington Road and it backs up, what is the harm if they have to wait a couple, 3 cycles of a light to either get to Tualatin Sherwood Road, which is now pretty much finished and does handle traffic well. 99 north or south is a problem, but it is also a main road. So that's kind of up to the state, ODOT, to fix that if that becomes a problem. And again, the only thing that we're trying to do is keep our neighborhoods safe and livable. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
My name is Bonnie Peterson, and I live at 10155 Southwest Juergens Lane. I'm right next to Juergens Park. And I've been a resident for about 33 years here in Tualatin and have seen it grow incredibly. When we first moved here, had 6,800 people. I think all of our goals of all the residents, and you especially on the city council, is to have Lamb as our good neighbor in our community. And I'm only, or we're the people that are opposed to the 2 things that we're asking. We're only asking that you as the city council to have our planning department follow our development code and by restricting, number 1, restricting 108th North driveway so that new employees or extra employees that are going in and out of that front parking lot that it looks like they have in their plan, not use that access. And then the second thing is we'd really like Lamb to show in the development code what they're going to do to address the noise requirement. And that's to keep our community a favorable place to live and also to work, especially since part of my federal taxes and part of my state taxes are going to Lamb to build this new facility, which I approve in paying, but I also like to have a voice in protecting the livability of Tualatin, which is a wonderful place to live. And thank you all for doing this wonderful volunteer job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? All right, come on up.
Janet Weber. I live at 17977 Southwest 115th Avenue, number 5. So I'm out here I reside basically on the intersection of 115th and Tualatin Road. Thank you for omitting Lamb traffic coming to 115th. Appreciate that. I'm pro-union. I'm all for jobs. I'm just like, we're not saying, hey, no Lamb employees. Yeah, we don't. We approve and appreciate the growth that they're doing. It's just we just are trying to ask Lamb to be a good neighbor. And sorry, I didn't have a speech written for this.
You're doing fine.
But, it's been a long day. So, I am in support of my neighbors for Lamb finding a way to help reduce the traffic on Tualatin Road to Stan Leviton. That road is always empty. And to show ways to decrease the noise volume as well, to make it a happy and livable community and neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? I'm not seeing any hands. Bates and Zoom. All right. David, you're up. He's muted. Okay. David, can you hear us? Is he still there or no? Okay. Is there anyone else on Zoom? All right. So with that, it's now time for Lamb to provide their rebuttal to the applicant and or the testimony.
Good evening, Dana Kraftcheck again, and we appreciate everyone's comments and everyone's endurance for still being here this evening, this late. I'm going to address some of the noise issues, and I've asked Brent to come up on some of the transportation issues. It really boils down to, on the noise issues, I think, whether it's mandatory approval criteria or performance standards. And why does that matter? It matters because it's the level of proof that's required at this stage. Appellants and I agree that if it's a mandatory approval standard, you have to show compliance with the criteria or that it's feasible to comply. The difference is if it's a performance standard, it's not that burden of proof because you don't have to demonstrate compliance with performance standards in advance. It's the City Council's job to interpret its code. We've provided written analysis for why we think it's a performance standard. We believe that your staff and your city attorney agree that it's applied as a performance standard. Just one example of why it's a performance standard is in the code section that talks about environmental regulations. In the purpose statement, which is not in and of itself a standard, but it helps you interpret your standards, it says the purpose of these standards are to provide a basis for enforcement. That tells you it's an after the fact, once it's operational, that's when you're applying this standard. But it's ultimately up to you. This is an example of if you should approve our application, which we certainly hope you do, you can hedge your bets and you can make findings in the alternative. You can say, we agree with our staff, we agree with our city attorney that this is a performance standard. But in the alternative, if a reviewing body determines that it was actually a mandatory standard, here's how it's met. And that's the beauty of the record that's before you. Even though we aren't required to show compliance with the noise standards, we have. The substantial evidence in the record shows that the existing facility complies and the future facility is likely to comply. It is feasible to comply. Appellants said, we're the experts in our own equipment, and they're right. And our noise expert evaluated exactly the equipment that's proposed in the model, and they studied the current noise also. So that is credible evidence that you could base a finding of compliance on, or a feasibility of compliance. We don't think you need to, but you could make that finding in the alternative. So in some respects, it's just a bunch of lawyers talking about performance standard versus mandatory approval criteria, because regardless of how you consider it, we meet it. There were some generalized requests for conditions related to noise. Why don't you put monitors up there so we can know exactly what's going on, for example? This is another one where I'm going to defer to your city attorney. Don't take it from me. But if a body is going to impose a condition of approval, two things have to happen. One, the condition has to be related to a mandatory approval criteria. And second, the evidence has to show that the condition is needed for compliance. So on the suggestion of, we'll just stick a monitor up there and tell us what's going on, that meets neither of those standards. You're not here to approve the existing facility, right? That's enforcement. And the evidence shows that the existing facility meets the standard. So that's why we don't just willy-nilly put conditions on, because it seems like a good idea. It has to be aligned with the approval criteria and what the evidence is. Same on future compliance. The condition 25 is appropriate and legally enforceable. It says that we have to comply with the performance standards of the code. That's all I've got on noise. On traffic, I'm going to turn it over to Brent to talk about some of these technical issues. And there's an important reason why. Traffic is a technical area where experts are needed to explain what all of the numbers mean and what all of the standards mean. And in this case, you've got LAM's expert, you've got the city engineer, you've got the experts hired by the city, and you've got ODOT, all in agreement that the proposal meets all of the approval criteria. So I think that's important to keep in mind. We understand that there's a community-wide concern about traffic. There's a systemic existing concern about trips turning left from 108th to Tualatin Road. LAM adding trips to that or not, if you close the north driveway, even though there's no basis for doing so, there are still going to be cars turning left from 108th onto Tualatin. So we feel like the solution that's been asked for here isn't going to address your system-wide problems. Those are bigger conversations that the city should be having. But with that premise of, again, all of the experts that have looked at this from all sides all agree that all of the approval criteria have been met. Brent, can you address some of the
Yeah, you took a
specifics?
little bit of my thunder there.
Yeah, sorry.
Again, Brent Aaron with McKenzie. So Dana summed it up pretty good, that maybe what I should say is recall that originally we had an access to Tualatin opposite 115th. And in the process of listening to the neighbors and looking at what the cut through would be if we were to line the driveway up there, where maybe 50% of the new trips plus some of the existing campus trips would find their way out to that driveway. We shifted, the site plan changed, we kept the focus onto the existing access points, and because of where the parking has to lay out on the site, because of what's available, again, about 6% of the campus trips would find their way down this north access driveway. It's a small percentage of the traffic, and again, we're talking about an estimate of 25 trips turning to and from Tualatin Road. Maybe 10 of them would find their way to cut through. That's just our best guess looking at the numbers. That impact is very, very small compared to what we had before. So it kind of feels like, we were good neighbors, we did something to address the concerns of the neighbors, but they still want, that last bit, like they don't want any trips. And we can't keep any trips from traveling down Tualatin Road. We know some well. And that's the analysis that we provided. And like Dana said, the city's reviewed it, their traffic consultant, an expert, DKS, they reviewed it, they agree. In fact, they were very thorough in the review. They asked us many, many questions during their review that we had to answer. So you can be sure that it was very thorough, and like Dana said, we're all in agreement of how it's going to operate. It meets the standards. There's no reason to close that north driveway. It really won't make much of a difference. Those trips will come out the other driveways, and if they really want to go to Tualatin Road, they'll find a way to get there. So.
I think the last thing I'll say about traffic, and this will conclude our remarks, but we're obviously happy to answer any questions, is, there's been some conversation about this existing driveway on 108th at the northernmost. Is it a new driveway? Is it an existing driveway? That's another example of the city council having the authority to make findings in the alternative. So an example is it's an existing driveway, so we don't need to apply these standards. But even if we did apply the standards, here's all the reasons why they're met. And we've provided those alternate findings in our materials. So with that, we request that you approve the ARB and deny the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. The city staff had anything to add specifically addressing a question raised during testimony? Both shaking their head no. All right. All right. So with that, I'll now close the public testimonies portion of the hearing.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Were you going to allow questions from the council
Yes.
of the
Yes.
The appellant and people that testified?
Yes. I thought I closed the public hearing, the public testimony section first, then go to questions, or no?
I think you should leave the public hearing open.
Okay, will do. All right, so it's not closed, it's still open, but now we're going to do Q&A. So now open the floor to city councilors for questions of the applicant, the proponent, so the appellant, the proponent, or any other folks who raised testimony tonight. Council President Pratt.
I'll start. Mr. Mulkey.
We're probably going to have to do rotating.
Yeah, sorry. I want to do this in a certain order. Just to kind of hone it down, I want to be clear of what you're asking, and what I heard is that you want two conditions of approval. One is that northern driveway in 108th is not accessible except for emergencies and construction, and that the noise, that they do a rooftop study for the noise. Is that correct?
Correct. That specifically for the noise, that they show what kind of noises their equipment is going to produce, not at the 5-foot level, but at the rooftop level that's going to be propagating potentially out into the neighborhoods. And then 2, show that they're going to mitigate that noise so that it's not an objectionable noise, or that it doesn't qualify as a noise disturbance, so that they show that that it's feasible that they will be able to meet the enforcement criteria.
Okay, great. Yeah. That's all I have for you. So, Kevin, I know legal terms have specific meanings, so in section 62-100, what does cause objection, or must not cause objectionable noise mean? Because that is the wording in there.
Yeah, and thank you, Council President. So the city, I agree, and I think city staff has agreed with the vast majority of what the proponent has testified to today regarding noise. We can quibble about whether TDC 62-100 is technically an official approval criteria or not. The city believes that it is, and it is implemented and effectuated through the environmental regulations in TDC 63, particularly 63051. And that's how it works. So when you look at 62-100, and it's broader than just noise. It's a purpose statement. Yes, it must not cause objectionable noise, smoke, odor, dust, noxious gases, vibration, and it goes on, glare, heat, etc. And so in the city's opinion, their interpretation of the code is that's implemented and effectuated, that provision, through 63051. And that states that generally, and this was the condition A25 that was imposed by the ARB, that they comply with the city's noise ordinance. And Counsel for Lamb mentioned, she was referencing, she didn't state it, but it's 63010, and that's the purpose statement of Chapter 63, industrial uses and utilities and manufacturing zones and the environmental regulations statutes. It mentions, it states in pertinent part that these environmental regulations are also intended to protect natural areas from the adverse effects of industrial development. It is intended that the following standards provide statutory authority for the enforcement of regulations relating to noise, vibration, air quality, odors, heat, glare, lighting. So it's similar to the language in TDC 62-100. So it is the city staff opinion that the only way, the only condition that could have been imposed was what the ARB did impose, and that's condition A25, to comply with the noise, the city's noise ordinance in TMC 614. There's just simply no correlation between the potential impacts of this application and any other condition besides the condition that was imposed, A25. And it'd be difficult to construct one that could pass legal muster. So now I did notice, and I think Mr. Mulkey has, he testified that the current alleged noise violations on Lamb's existing development, it certainly shows what kind of noises that Lamb facilities create generally. And I think with the connotation is that if the current Lamb facilities are violating the noise ordinance, then obviously this application and the development associated with that is also going to violate the city's noise ordinance, and requesting some conditions to evaluate the noise and ensure that there are no objectionable humming or vibrations or hissing coming from that. But I just don't think it's would pass a legal review if this was challenged. There's no legitimate planning purpose or objective in imposing any further condition based on the evidence in the record before you, because we simply don't know what noise is going to emanate from a application and development that hasn't been constructed yet.
So, because there's a question out there of the current facility and the noise level. I mean, is that not determined at this point? And so how do we know what the new facility will be based on that if we're getting a lot of different answers, and it's rather confusing.
And it's without question that there has been allegations that Lamb's current facility violates the city's noise ordinance, and that's being investigated by the city's code enforcement department. And so if there is a violation of the city's noise ordinance, there is a mechanism in place for the city to bring that action to the judicial officer, which is the municipal court judge. That will afford both the complainant and Lamb due process to litigate the matter and come up with a viable solution. I think it's difficult at this point, with the evidence in the record, to come up with a condition that would satisfy some further legal review.
Okay, thank you. And then, to the Lamb people, I have a question on that north parking lot. So, I wrote down that it won't be connected to parking G, but that map is so small, and I looked at it like a couple days ago, so can you explain what parking G is? Is that one of the two lots, or is it one big lot?
So the parking that was added with building G is immediately along that frontage of 108th. And the two new driveways on 108th were constructed for that parking lot. So what we're saying is there was no connection made to that existing north driveway. And with Building G,
Okay.
and
Will
we're
there
not
be a
proposing to connect it either.
So I guess I'm not understanding why, you're just going to allow cars to go on there, but you're saying it's such a small amount.
Right, because there's a small parking lot being added kind of north of the older buildings,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And that's,
A new parking.
if you're familiar with where the north parking lot is, right? It's just to the
Yeah.
east of that, there'll be a small parking lot added there.
Okay.
And so a lot of the people that are working in Building H, because we expect that new parking that was provided with G will pretty much fill up with H plus some overflow. And most of the people in H would park in that parking lot due north. And that's where they'd go in and out that north access. If we were to connect that north access to the rest of the parking for Building G, then there would be more trips, more vehicles from that parking lot that might try to go north and
Right.
use that driveway.
But that's
So
not
we
what
don't
you're
want to
planning
encourage
to
that,
do.
right?
So out of that the parking lot by Building H, the north parking lot, how much of that traffic do you expect to go north as opposed to south when they exit?
Yeah, so I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's probably about a third of that traffic that would head out to that parking lot. The other 2/3, is heading towards Sherwood or Newburgh or south on I-5, and they're not going to go out to Tualatin Road.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? Really? Councilor Gonzalez.
I have the map right in front of me, so you were hoping that people who are in building G, H, and B would park on the south side closer to Leviton Street, so they would naturally want to leave that section, because if not, they happen to fish their way all the way through the north section of the exit, which is inconvenient, which kind of bottlenecks the traffic is going out. So I understand that. I understand what she was asking as well. And Lamb did make changes to their facility, correct, to try to accommodate these concerns that they're citing right now, which is very applaudable. I'm sure that costs a lot of money and time as well. What I wanted to ask, and this is for our maybe this attorney, is the noise complaints that were filed, that were mentioned. When were those filed roughly? Were they? Is this recent? Is this something that people began to prepare and file? Again, this is just asking a question. Did they begin to file complaints knowing that they were going to have this complaint here? When were those complaints filed?
And I may have to defer to other staff. I believe at least some of the complaints came before that. I think these are potentially long-standing issues with Lamb's current development. They just didn't come in the month before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need a longer table.
Thanks, Councilor Gonzalez, for the question.
Oh, before you add that, so when they first were considering doing this, they were considering doing this plan before they filed. I know there was. When was that first, and how does that correlate with when the complaints came in?
Okay, I think what you're asking is probably about the neighborhood developer meeting, when that was. If I'm remembering the timeline right, it was, I think, spring or June, May or June of 2024. And so what I know of the history of the noise complaints, I think that our code enforcement officer has received noise complaints for, I don't know, prior to this whole application happening, but I'm using my hand because I'm thinking it's about a handful. But when the Architectural Review Board and the Industrial Master Plan were noticed, we received about 80 complaints. And then our code enforcement officer, he followed up with all of those 80 because they were actually directed towards the land use applications. So we followed up to say, okay, would you like to submit a formal complaint, like through the code enforcement process? And of that, of those 80, there were 32 people who were basically eligible, meaning they were residents and wanted to file a formal complaint. Then it went from there. We're still working on the list and following up. So
Thank you. You answered the question exactly what I was looking for. Thank you very much for that. I think that's all I got for right this moment.
Other questions? All right. Traffic engineer, where'd he go? Oh, he's right behind you. Come back up. One of my favorite subjects, traffic.
Hiding.
So going to the appellant's stats about the 2,036 trips and his math of 203 trips a day, can you address that based on what your explanation, because you say it's 25 trips, and is that per day, is that per hour? And then the second part of the question is, I remember peak AM and PM, it's not a specific hour, it's multiple hours, if I remember right, because on traffic studies before, it's like the AM peak runs usually from anywhere from 6 to 9, and PM peak is 4 to 6. It's not 1 hour. So can you address those two items?
Right, okay. So first, to address what is the peak hour. The peak hour is the peak of the site. That's what we looked at. And generally, in the afternoon, it's 4:30 to 5:30. That's where we see the highest volume that happens between 3 and 6. And we originally looked at the campus from like 3 to 6 because we knew of the neighbor concerns, right? When we had an access originally proposed at Tualatin, we wanted to know what is that potential during times that school gets out for the middle school there. Okay, you're correct that, most of the traffic will come to the campus in the morning and will leave. It's about a 3-hour window that traffic comes and goes to the campus, at least the people that are working kind of the typical day shift, 8 to 5 sort of thing. So, but what we looked at is kind of the peak hour within that 3. Okay. There was a lot of discussion about what type of use is LAM. Is it an office? Is it manufacturing? And we started looking at, okay, we know how many trips are occurring, and this was going back to the spring of 24 when we counted all the driveways. We said, okay, we know how many people are working at the campus in all the shifts, and we know what the peak hour trips are. What land use correlates well with that? And we found that research and development correlated very well for both the AM and the PM, probably within a 10% range, right? So the city and their consultant agreed with us. That's what we went with. So we validated those peak hours. We never validated the daily trip number because it's not really used for anything, right? We don't analyze the daily trips. We look at what's the peak impact on the road, plus the peak of the existing conditions on the road, and that's what we analyze. So it's about 3.4 trips per employee if you look at that daily number, so 2,036. I think it's probably a little bit on the high side, but that's what that land use gave us, right? It was 244 trips for the AM peak hour and 233 for the PM peak hour. That's what we've analyzed. The hours before and beyond that will be lower, but they're probably within 60 to 80% of what those numbers are.
Okay. And then, as you noted, you mentioned before, and it's in your report at the end of the packet that we got, that with Tualatin Shore Road construction finally completing, that traffic relief is occurring on Tualatin Road, and that you did another updated count, and you saw less vehicles on Tualatin Road because they're going back to Tualatin Shore Road?
Right, and when we did the count originally in the spring of 24, we saw that the volumes were quite a bit higher, and it made sense that the neighbors were saying, hey, the volume's really high here, what's going on? And talking with the city, it's like, yeah, there is some impact. And we looked, of course, with the pandemic, it was really hard to make an estimate of what that number is. So I was thinking it was probably 1 to 200 was my best guess. So for one of the hours, we found it was 125, which kind of took an average 24 and 25 in the spring, and the one we counted at the end of October. 125 less than one, and 350 less than the other peak hour. Wow. Huge. So that validated what we were thinking, and I really wanted to know what those numbers were, because as soon as I realized the construction was substantially complete, all the lanes are open, hey, let's go check it out, because I think that will show that the volumes were higher, and that drove some of the neighbor complaints. Now, I kind of wish we would have got counts on 115th and Hazelbrook as well to see if those numbers dropped also, but we didn't do that.
Okay, and
Mayor, can
so,
I generate?
just one more thing. You go ahead while I think about how to phrase my
No,
question.
it's so my daughter goes to school there near the Century Cemetery, there's a church there. I was meandering all through the police station in front of Tualatin Road. I would go through that way because it was faster, hit 99, round corner. I mean, basically fishing tail. It took me about 18 to 19 minutes to get through there. And now that Tualatin Road is open, I'm like, okay, I need to just test it out. It took me literally from my house, I live in East Tualatin, okay, on the other side of Highway 5. It takes me 11 minutes to get from my house all the way to Century, the Pioneer, on Tualatin Sherwood Wood. So I'm no longer meandering through all that anymore, all the way to try to avoid all that traffic anymore. So I am now just going down Tualatin Sherwood Wood, it's faster. So I was one of those people driving and causing that additional traffic. I mean, this is just my own example. And we're clocking it because, you got to get to school on time. And it took about 18 minutes to go from the police station to Tualatin Road, 99, make a left. It's faster, so I went that way because you go faster on 99 to get to Roy Rogers Road, make a right. Well, now Tualatin Shore is open. 11 minutes from my house all the way past to Rogers. So that's where I'm going now. And I would imagine that in the last 2 years when the construction was going, I'm sure that got exasperated quite a bit in front of Tualatin Road, quite a bit. So
the question I have, I read your report, and one of the things always head scratcher I always talk to Mike about is the requirements for a traffic light. And in the study, and ODOT, and you all concurred that there was no need for a traffic light at 115th. There's not a requirement for 108th. And my just general question is, when does that trigger that you do need a traffic light? What do you have to hit? Because
Yeah.
I can see folks saying, well, isn't a solution a traffic light? But I know you can't just slap one in. There's pretty high standards for a traffic light.
There's so many warrants. I mean, some of them are based on pedestrians. I mean, there's ones even that are a system. Does it make sense to put a signal here in the coordination of flow? But most of them are based on volumes. So there's a peak hour volume, which generally don't want to look at that because why would you build a signal for 1 hour for the day, right? But usually you look at like 4 hours or 8 hours of the day, and then you have certain thresholds. The side street has to be a certain volume compared to the main line, and there's kind of different thresholds you can look at. So and just because you meet 1 or 2 warrants doesn't mean that you should put one in. There's other decisions. Obviously, there's funding, there's political reasons, there's all sorts of things to look at. But for a traffic engineer, does it meet the volume thresholds, or are there safety concerns that would warrant a signal? But I would also caution that you put in a traffic signal and you might not necessarily reduce the number of crashes, you change the type. Rear ends are much more common at a traffic signal than at a two-way stop.
Okay, thank you. All right. Other questions? Council President Pratt.
Mr. McCarthy, glad you came up to the front of the room. So I'm a little unclear about this. There was discussion about traffic at light at Tualatin Road and 99, but Tualatin Road and 99 don't intersect, so that confused me a little. But if we're talking about 124th and Tualatin Road, does Tualatin Road, when it hits 124th, have a light there? I can't remember.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so if I'm remembering correctly, our TSP had a thing where we are going to update the software, and that's going to happen in the next year or two. Is that correct? Potentially.
Hi, so just for the record, Mike McCarthy, city engineer working for the city. I think maybe to help explain a bit of one of the previous questions about the daily volume coming up 108th, some of that would turn left, some of that would turn right. So it would be about, I think I had 24 turning left and 21 turning right at the peak hour. Add that together, that's a much higher percentage of that. And I forget if 200 is the actual number, but of that daily amount. So some would turn left, some would turn right. Some would actually be like people who live in the neighborhood who work at Lamb. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. As far as the Tualatin Road getting to 124th and to 99. There is an existing signal at 124th and Tualatin Road, and we've been working with the county, who maintain our signals for us by agreement, to get those signals coordinated well. And they currently have it set so that basically to help facilitate the traffic, particularly turning left from 99 onto 124th, to then turn left again onto Tualatin Road, since that's a pretty significant volume. And they're prepared to and have the capacity to increase that flow if that traffic volume were to increase. So there's a fair amount of room where they could add to that. We're not expecting much of that with this particular proposal because the driveways have been relocated to Leviton.
Yeah, that was, I guess that's my other question, since you understand traffic flows, like, if that were to actually happen where Tualatin Road started getting backed up, wouldn't people kind of naturally go down to Leviton to avoid traffic?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably, I think they would if they were encountering more delays on the Tualatin Road side. And I think, just from what I saw also, the kind of where the parking lot would be, driving kind of all the way out that long driveway to Tualatin Road is a fair ways out of the way to then come back for anybody who's turning left. And
Yeah, I
just-
guess that's what I'm trying to understand. Would it be easier to naturally flow under?
For much of the parking lot, it would actually be shorter to just go down to Leviton
Okay.
and go out that way. And I think that's why there's only 6% going out the northern driveway to 108th.
Okay. Thanks.
Stop, you have that question, Octavio?
No, I was just.
So while you're up here, no one's mentioned Herman Road. I mean, because back when there was the discussions of the access on the northern side of the campus, there was a lot of focus on driving traffic down Herman Road and up 108th. And now that Lamb has closed or withdrawn the proposals, having those two entrances there, you know, folks coming from the east, I would assume would go down Herman Road because it's faster. So therefore, they wouldn't ever go towards 108th and Tualatin Road. They'd be traversing Herman Road because it's faster. And didn't we discuss that at one point?
Yes, and I think the updated traffic study had about 3 times as much traffic going south on 108 towards Herman Road as it had on Tualatin Road, along the north side of the site. So I think, yeah, I think the modeled numbers are showing, I think, what you're surmising.
Other questions?
Oh, and I will just corroborate that we have reviewed their traffic study. We did hire DKS, a private consultant, to review their traffic study, and we did find that it met our requirements for traffic studies.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, Councilor Sacco.
I'd just like to ask one clarifying question to Tualatin's attorney. So you had mentioned something earlier, and I just want to make sure I have the correct understanding that if in the case that we were to approve this appeal, what would the next steps could be that Lamb could then has an appeal process. Is that correct?
And Councilor Suck, I may want to just clarify, are you asking that if the council made a motion to approve the appeal and then essentially side with the appellant tonight?
Correct, yeah. And that, I guess I am trying to understand, you know, if, I guess what would be the next steps into the future if we were to provide the conditions that were laid out by the appellant. Would there be like an additional appeals process? I'm trying to understand what sort of costs would be associated with that for the city longer term if there was an additional appeals process if we were to put these conditions in place, or is that just it? If we were to put the conditions in place, is that sort of the final saying? Or does Lamb have the opportunity to come back to say, I don't agree with the decision that the council made tonight, I would like to appeal to some other body?
I believe that the matter would be continued, and I think this is in the presentation. It would be continued to another date to allow the proponent, Lamb, to address those conditions and whether they were able to comply or meet those conditions or not. Ultimately, they could decide to just appeal the matter. There's going to be a final decision and appeal the matter as they see fit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, now can I close the public hearing?
Your Honor, I'm just getting my script up here.
All right. So I believe I closed the public testimony portion, and now we start council discussion.
If there's no more questions of city staff or the appellant or the applicant, it's appropriate to close the public hearing.
All right. Seeing no further questions, I'll go ahead and close the public testimony portion of the hearing. The hearing is now closed, and now is discussion among council members. All right, Council President Pratt.
I mean, this is tough because I think these neighborhood concerns are valid, and but I feel the traffic is going to be there regardless of, because I mean we're adding traffic. We have a traffic problem, and we are adding to it. But I don't think closing off one driveway is going to make it much different. And then with the noise concerns me more. I know Lamb's been, they closed off 115th, they've done things. It bothers me somewhat that they're arguing back when these people are concerned about the noise and that they're not doing more. But in my opinion, I wouldn't support the conditions of the approval, and I hold what the Architectural Review Board did.
Okay. Others? Councilor Reyes, then Councilor Sacco.
Yeah, I am also concerned about the noise and the matters that were brought to us about the traffic, and I can see that being, I mean, we live in a world that's evolving, and that's always going to be a concern for everyone. And I'm with Councilor Valerie Pratt that the noise is what really kind of concerns me the most. But I also have to respect the architecture board who looked through this and spent hours as well prior to this meeting, and what they decided and what they brought to us at the time. I trust that they also did their due diligence and that they worked really hard to bring this application to us and gave their approval. So I want to uphold that because I trust that body also is very smart and wise, and what they bring to us, I'm sure they've done their due diligence. Thank you.
Councilor Sacco.
Thank you. So regarding the traffic, for me, I have to rely on the experts and the standards that were presented during this hearing and in the exhibits provided. I know that there are traffic concerns in Tualatin, but just based on the evidence and the testimony, I don't think that the traffic rises to the level that would justify not going through with the ARBs, what they've already put forward. And then there's already a condition in place to ensure the compliance is followed for the noise standards. However, and I also understand that, we can't measure something that doesn't exist today. But I also can't, Lamb is putting an enormous amount of money into this. into this facility, I can't imagine that they would do so knowing that they're going to face issues in the future, that they will sort of self-police this so they can be viable moving forward with the amount of money that they're investing in this location. I mean, as a city councilor, it's my responsibility to make a decision that serves the best interests of the entire city. And we heard lots of testimony about that tonight. And I also understand what benefits, the greater good creates burden for some, and that's also a really hard thing to bear as an elected official. My hope is to make everybody happy, but unfortunately, that's not always possible, but we have certain criteria that we must follow that has been set forth, and our decision has to be based on that criteria.
I agree with the other counselors. What this comes down to me for is criteria, and that's what we have to make the judgment on. I know I live in the neighborhood, I'm impacted, but we have to make the decisions based on criteria, not on emotion, not on feel, not on assumptions. As was mentioned, closing the northern entrance on 108th, is that going to solve the issues of safety at that intersection? No. Being a resident neighborhood, we all know the reason for the safety issue at 108th is the trees. You can't see past the trees, but no one wants to cut those trees down. Back then when Mayor Ogden was here, we had this discussion and people went crazy about cutting down the trees. You cut down those trees, you have a lot better visual, but no one wants to do that. We all edge out to get to see past those trees. But closing down that driveway isn't going to significantly impact the safety of that intersection. You just, like Brett said, we all have to, when we go to that intersection, you got your spidey senses up there, looking both ways. The sound issue, I remember, I've been in that neighborhood over 20 years. There's been other complaints against sound, and they were resolved. There was complaints against the sheet metal manufacturer down there. I'm forgetting the company that's behind Lamb had sound issues. They were resolved once the complaint was done, went through the process, and the sound issues went away. So I'm pretty sure all these sound issues that Lamb is being charged with, they will be resolved, and they will also address any issues in the future. So based on the two things that were the focus of tonight, the traffic studies, the traffic impact and sound, based on the criteria, I have to uphold the decision of the ARB. So with that.
Mayor, I would like to prepare a motion, but I would like to ask for a 5-minute recess.
Okay. So we'll do a 5-minute recess while the motion is prepared. So we'll be back at, let's say, 10:35. Into session, and you're supposed to be ready, Bates. Come on. All right. So I'm reconvening the City Council meeting of 11/10/2025. We just left off with the hearing on the ARB appeal, and Council President Pratt has a motion.
I move to deny the appeal and affirm ARB decision AR 240002 dated September 10th, 2025, and direct staff to prepare an order and resolution that incorporates findings to support the council's decision, which includes ARB's decision of findings AR 240002, staff supplemental staff report dated November 10th, 2025, proponent Lamb's alternative findings demonstrating compliance with TDC 63051 and TDC 74 and 75. Okay, that's it. And I'm going to really quick say thank you to everybody on both sides for caring this much about our community.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny the appeal of the ARB. Any motions on those discussions? Any discussions on those motions? Seeing none, Councilor Gonzalez?
I vote in support.
Councilor Sacco?
Aye.
Councilor Reyes?
Yes.
Council President Pratt?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimous. The ARB decision is upheld and the appeal is denied. All right.
So that will be back on a resolution on November 24th.
Right.
As you described.
We'll wait for Councilor Hilliard to get back up to the dais. I gotta scroll way back up. I gotta get way back up to the thing, yeah. All right, so that brings us to, I think, the citizen council, the council agenda. All right, that brings us to general business. Item number 1, consideration of recommendations from the council committee on advisory appointments.
Yeah.
Councilor Reyes.
Thank you, everyone. So once again, we had a great group of people apply for the Planning Commission, Library Advisory Committee, and IDEA Committee. And again, we were able to interview wonderful people and in our community who want to volunteer, and we're excited that we selected them. And I like Councilor Sacco and Councilor Pratt to talk more about it.
For the Planning Commission, we have Ursula Kuhn and Ray Litz. For the Library Advisory Committee, Dana Polino and Melissa Lawrence.
For the IDEA Committee, we have Emily Baker, Aaron Stimson, Samantha Peterson, Maya Schroeder, Laura Enberson, and Nina Ichikawa. I guess to conclude, I make a motion to adopt these recommendations as read.
I do have a question.
Second.
Okay. Discussions.
Yes, I like to know, using the IDEA's own language, is how diverse is the DI committee? Can you guys share that with me?
I guess I don't know how to answer that question. We could pull up, I guess we could pull up the code as what
That's the fallacy, that you can't even say what race somebody is. When you say diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're supposed to be able to say with clear conscience that it is diverse, but you can't say that. You have to go, I mean.
Councilor Gonzalez, I cannot put everybody on that committee in a box.
I understand, but if it's diversity, I like to see the diversity, because I feel that this no longer is diverse or has diverse opinions. I think it's one-sided now.
Councilor Gonzalez, can you categorize everybody on this committee?
Well, I think I'm Mexican, proud to say it, and I have no problem saying what people are. And this IDEA committee, you can't even say what people are.
I don't think that's for us to decide to categorize.
It is the rules of the IDEA community to be diverse, and if it's not diverse, it is not doing what it's supposed to be meant to be done.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
At one point, not that long ago, Councilor Sacco and I had a conversation. We actually kind of went through to discuss this concern, and we do have we have a lot of diversity in this. We have people from different ethnic cultures. We have people with different, we have people with physical situations. We have people of different ages and people with different economic backgrounds. So we were confident that we still have a very diverse group of people representing a large swath of our community.
That is an excellent response. So thank you for that. That is very well said. Okay, thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. I know this is a verbal one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The appointments, recommendations are accepted and unanimously. Moving on to, scroll way back up again. How many page? The 949-page packet we got here?
I know.
Yeah. There were no items removed from consent. Any council communications? Just want to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day, especially veterans. Again, the city's event is 130 people attended it, lots of compliments, and again, more and more inquiries from other cities and how they can replicate our breakfast, because we do have people from outside our city coming to attend. So again, we do a fantastic recognition of our veterans with the signs, with the breakfast, and every day, and we have Veterans Plaza, so terrific. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to say one thing before
sure.
I do that, please. I would just like to say, and I sat in the audience for 2+ hours this evening, and I got to observe civil discourse among everyone here and to try to do what's best for our community. And then I come back up here and I have a whole different feeling about how the last conversation went. And so I think I just would really encourage and admonish us to listen to the words that the city manager talked about, that it is our job to set an example. And when people watch and understand, acknowledge how we treat each other, and I think we need to pay attention to that. So with that, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Thank you, good night, have a very good evening.
Happy Veterans Day, Mayor.
Thank you.